You like pushing buttons, I see, don't you?
And he's back. And he's back. Boom, shakalaka. We're live. Anwar, thank you. Thank you for coming, buddy. We've been trying to do this for a while. You missed the last one.
Oh, yeah. We've been trying, man.
We did one that didn't air, and then because we had technical difficulties, that was all on me. And then we had another one because you had a little bit of a little bump. You got beat up by a 12-year-old.
Nothing but pure fabrications.
Nothing
like this
to what happened
ever took place.
No, it's not what happened. But he couldn't make it.
Complete made up story.
He couldn't make it for a second, so we had to reschedule. So
motivated only by the attempt to manipulate the person on the other side of him. Period.
Hey, at least I don't pull a full-on Tom Segura and fucking say some crazy shit going into it to make it look like you have a bad opinion about something.
Oh, I see what you mean.
The way he starts Two Bears, One Cave, that shit cracks me up every week. Every week. Whatever they're talking about, it's so genuine, and then he gets them to cue it, and he sets them up for something, makes them look really bad every week. It's hilarious.
You know what? We got to get down.
But we made it, dude. We made it. We rescheduled. You're here. I'm excited to have you, man.
We got to talk about these Vikings. We got to talk about our expectations and what we expect, right? And first, we got to talk about Kirk Cousins, right? We got to talk about the quarterback for two reasons.
He's been fired up about this for like a month, you guys. So
it's been a month. It's been years. It's what is he here for 3 years?
Specifically, the last month, you've really been fired up about this. Every phone call, this is what the basis starts. He'll just call me and start talking as if I've been with him for the last half hour.
Lights, camera, action.
And it's just like, I answer the phone and he's like, listen, so you got, and he just, so all right, so here we go. We're talking Kirk Cousins. We're talking Vikings football.
What's the word? Minutia? Skip the minutia and get right to the point.
We're 1-3. It's a disaster. Yeah. I don't even have faith that the Vikings will tank the season properly.
Wait, let me cut you off for a second.
For the last week.
I need to redeem myself for about 30 seconds. First, understand when we're talking about Vikings football, we need to skip the semantics, the minutia, right? No, we need to get right to the point on these phone conversations, right? I need to let go because I don't have John Madden football to play anymore and start a franchise with the Vikings and cut and release everybody that pisses me off. Right? I don't have that luxury because I'm boycotting the whole Madden thing. It's a joke. We have a 11-year-old and trying to get this kid to gamble. I have a problem with it. Period. Right. But anyway,
you're talking about on the football field.
Yeah, the ultimate
take
packs.
A risk.
Well, no, the kids they play Ultimate Team. That's big for kids now, and they need virtual bucks.
Oh, so I see what you're saying. So the Madden franchise has turned into basically a gambling organization,
bingo, right? That wants to make
it's pay to play,
billions and billions, exactly.
Yeah. Microtransactions,
bingo.
Microtransactions aren't bad, but it depends on how they're set up. Like microtransactions can be cool. They can be the best version of gaming, but not the way they're doing it. They're doing it in a way that I see what you're saying.
There isn't a thing you shouldn't be able to achieve on the game without playing it.
Just in case anybody else was I was confused for a second.
Okay,
so now I understand what you're talking about. It is a little sadistic the way Madden is going away from traditional gaming, the way they're implementing microtransactions. It's a game marketed to mostly kids who don't have money. So they're
parents' credit card.
Yeah, and and it's a grind. Like you gotta constantly be paying in. It's an addiction almost, and it's bad. It's not a cool way to do.
Remove the word almost. It is an addiction. Period. And that's why people will do it again this year. They'll go through the same rigmarole to do what? Purchase an Ultimate Team. But it's people like me that made a decision to boycott it because John Madden football and me go back like babies and pacifiers. Is that what he said? Yeah, right. So we go back, and the problem I have is they're not being loyal to their most loyal fan base, and so it's time to take a rest from them for a little bit. But
by most loyal fan base, you mean the franchise players, the Simmons.
The people who have bought their game every year, and if you were to look at the amount of hours put in, are done by the franchise players because we have storylines going. We have things we're using this as some soap opera, right? That it's like it literally you have things you're acting out. You got a rookie quarterback in the game, and it's funny because if you watch the guys who do videos, they do the same thing, right? They look at it and they play it in a manner that is no different. They're doing the same thing. They got all these storylines in their mind, And, honestly, I think a game like that's fun because it's challenging, right? It's like putting together Rubik's Cube. You're trying to really think about the most honest way to build a team, to get you to just think, to get you to it's a challenge. And it's almost like every year they should aim to make that challenge harder, to a point where to go 16-0 in a franchise should be like an achievement, because the game is that diverse, right? Meaning they're just matchups, not overall ratings, that are in another team's favor under given circumstances. So if you have a team who is strong to stop the run but don't have any pass rushers, right? Well, what happens? If you need to pass the ball late in the game, you'll be able to do it.
Right. And like speed and agility and acceleration should have a boost when you're playing in an
not even a boost. They just have to
versus grass.
Yes.
Wet grass.
Details, right?
Yeah,
small
like
details.
Nuances.
Yeah.
So it's like normally if we're playing fucking this team at US Bank Stadium, we got them all day long, but then we go down to fucking Chicago and we look like shit because we're playing in Soldier Field and it's under wet conditions, and the way our team is built, we just can't, because in those conditions, what do? You pivot and you try to go to a power run because nobody can get any fucking footing, right? This is classic old school Jim Brown style football now. But if you don't have a team, if you're built on finesse, good fucking luck.
And that honestly should be, when you think about a team is a body. And that body has a certain flow. So, like, for instance, let's say, the game we've had this technology for almost 20 years, right? You go back to the other Madden franchises, and they had everything that we're talking about. Here's what we should be talking about now. So on my way to your house, I just happened to listen to my GPS like I've never listened to her before, right? And she said, make a right by Subway. And I'm like, she told me to make a right by Subway. I would have been confused if I didn't get that piece of information.
Wow, she's evolving.
How did she know?
She's evolving.
Exactly, right? So when you think about the technology that we have, dude, it really was.
Creepy. Because that's a corporate place that's like easily registered, but someday it's going to be like, that's going to be your
Jared's
neighbor's house. Yeah, it'll be like, take a right at James' house.
You know what?
That's where James lives? I didn't even know that.
It may be already for all we know, right? Who knows? Right? Because they know where you are, right?
She'll be the tour guide. There'll be no more job of tour guide. You'll just turn on Siri. You are now.
Not even
look to your right.
Siri.
You are now.
The narrator from just the Google. Dude, it's ridiculous, man.
That's hilarious.
But the game should have like so many elements that affect like the outcome of how a team performs. So when you think about what confidence does, right? Like the teams themselves should have ratings, not offense, defense, no, but like for instance, cohesiveness. So because you have cohesiveness, what happens, right? Things happen, like routes are better. Whereas like Madden should be like to a point where you have to get coordinators to fix this, and you have to be successful for a few years to change certain elements, right? Like coming in, taking the Miami Dolphins and making them a powerhouse. You should literally be spending months trying to do this, right? Unless you right? There's other ways to expedite it, right? But the game is lacking certain character that at this point it really should have. The ability to like so with matchups, for instance, like let's say you have a meter called confidence, right? And rather than a boost, sure, give them a boost, right? But to allow a player or team to just perform based on rating is a bunch of nonsense because there's so many other factors.
Well, yeah, and the way they apply those boosts, like confidence can't make you faster. It doesn't make you more agile.
It should make you more proficient at the offense you execute, right? So, for instance,
it should make you more willing to take a risky play and pull it off.
Yeah, like really show a huge disparity between bad players and good players, right?
Right.
And there's just a rating isn't enough. They don't have enough statistics to do it. But regardless of that, when you think about like what the Vikings are doing right now, the first thing we got to look at is the quarterback. The quarterback always gets more praise. Right, but what's the other side of the coin? They get the most heat when a team isn't succeeding.
Right.
The first question you have to ask yourself, is it warranted? Is it really warranted? So should he? Like a good example is the year that Adrian Peterson rushed for almost what came within 13 yards of breaking the all-time record, right? Against Green
7
Bay.
yards.
7 yards, right? That year, Christian Ponder was 11-5. And so going into the playoff game.
You mean Christine Ponder?
Yeah. Look, you know what?
I'm joking.
This but when you go back and think about it, they gave him a ton of credit, right? Like, why would you even say that in his name when two major things happened that season? One, he was one of the only quarterbacks in NFL history to lose a game in which a running back rushed for over 220-something yards, right? There's a stat that he was a part of, but we want to give Christian Ponder credit for 11-5. So you get that as a quarterback sometimes when you shouldn't, right? Or like with Alex Smith, right? Is it really him or has it just been the teams? All these aren't just simple answers. They deserve a certain dive to really understand. So when you think about Kirk Cousins, the first thing you can do.
I'd take Alex Smith right now over Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, at least you know what you're going to get.
Back from the injury yet.
No, he isn't. No, he's on the depth chart now. I think he's third now.
Is he?
He's back. Believe it or not, So where
is he?
Washington.
He's still in Washington.
Yeah, he's still in Washington. Yeah, they signed him to a big contract. They're kind of handcuffed to him.
Oh, really? I'd trade him right now for Cousins. I'd trade him, flip him.
Look, at least you know what you're going to get with Alex Smith. You know that typically
he's a game manager.
He'll run the ball at the drop of a dime if he has to. But typically he's going to make the one read. But one thing about him is he can make every NFL throw. Mm-hmm. So he can throw down the field if he needs to. Like we saw that in Kansas City. Under Andy Reid, that he can stretch the ball, he can put some points up, but
and he can throw from the pocket under pressure,
exactly.
Which is huge. Like he doesn't have to run. So now that he's broken the leg, maybe he understands. Like, hey man, don't run around.
Yeah,
like, just stay there. Like, and then he could be that. And I've told you this a million times. I think that's what holds a lot of quarterbacks back from greatness is they're traditionally the best athletes on the field. They're used to running literally away from their problems when the pocket breaks down, so on and so forth. So, if he learns to just stay disciplined and stay in the pocket, I think that actually might make him a better quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised.
Who knows? Yeah, but what it's going to force him to do is play the game in a different way as opposed to being – now, when you go into Kansas City and realize that every quarterback, that goes there, right, under Andy Reid is going to succeed. That's just it. That's his track record, period. Quarterbacks are going to have their career years under Andy Reid. And we can go down a list of quarterbacks. I can bring up McNabb, Michael Vick, right?
But didn't Alex Smith have a pretty darn
he had
good
a game
run in San Francisco towards the end?
He had a game managing type of statistic, right, in San Francisco.
He had a really rough start.
Yeah, but they weren't winning games. They were like 1-15, right?
Yeah.
But with Alex Smith, even those years they went to the NFC Championship game, lost to the Giants, I think, one year, and then that's when they made the change after that. I saw the same things, that he was limited as a quarterback, right? He didn't put up great numbers. He put up, like, I just need you to go game manage, right? Just what Kyle Orton had to do with the Bears. When you get to Kansas City, he put up numbers. Any fantasy player out there can remember a time when you could, like, I'll go Alex Smith. That's right. I'll go Alex Smith because – Kansas City's offense, right?
Right.
Got it like the Tyreek Hill at that point, Kels, a dominant O-line.
Basically, is what you're kind of getting at is like Andy Reid quarterbacks are good, especially in fantasy.
Because Andy Reid is an offensive guru who,
Gotcha.
Awesome. He got a Super Bowl ring, and we can't say anything about him. Everybody criticized
he finally got
his style, right? And what are they doing now? This is Andy Reid's league as far as how teams run offenses, right? That Reid run type, it's incredible. So again, as I said before,
the RPO you're saying, the Reid run, the run,
that's Andy Reid, right? So, the thing I've come to understand though about assessing a quarterback is, are those losses because of him, right? Or is it a success because of him? So we go and look at Washington years of Kirk Cousins. If all you're going to do is look at those numbers and say, well, he did, almost 5,000 yards there, 4,200 there, 4,000 there, right? 30 if you're going to put up numbers, they're going to mislead you, because understand that when you're on a successful team, they want every position to succeed. So believe it or not, Alex Smith will tell you when he got benched, right, he got injured, he'll tell you about some quarterback rating. But the team played better with Colin Kaepernick. There were more explosive plays down the field, and Colin Kaepernick could do something that, Alex Smith couldn't do, which is wiggle and run for 40, 50 yards. Alex Smith could run, but not the same back. So, Harbaugh saw something that even though the numbers, these flawed stats.
Alex Smith wasn't faster than anyone on the field.
He did, but Alex Smith's a great athlete.
Maybe the O-lineman.
But Alex Smith's surprisingly a good athlete, right? But regardless, he's limited as a quarterback.
He's just not Kaepernick.
Yeah, he's not Kaepernick. Yeah, he's not juking people, make people move.
Athlete. Even fucking Russell Wilson is a fucking fast runner, man.
He's a basketball player,
surprisingly fast.
Yeah, and he'll take off and he'll make good decisions. So, going back into Kurt's Washington years, you got to look at the coordinators they had and realize that I think 3 of them are head coaches. The biggest issue with Kirk Cousins is when you understand his battle with confidence. It's almost like he has to have the odds stacked against him to succeed, right? So when he knew that there was a quarterback controversy, you got some number 3 overall pick on your team, number 2 in RG3.
Right.
I think that was heated motivation for Kirk. But the thing that people aren't talking about with Kirk Cousins is, why is he inconsistent? See, the problem is he's like a very erratic heartbeat, right? 1 minute you're here and then you're here. Just give us some in between. Don't be really, really shitty and be like, all right, okay, I think you may be pretty good. That's a problem for us as fans because it's up and down, and I think it's what motivates him. And understand, for a lot of people who experience that type of success, he has, like, when you start to really calculate the amount of money that he makes, with this comes a whole different set of problems for him, right? And how do you maintain that hunger? How do you maintain that competitive fire? Because the one thing that the great quarterbacks have is unwavered confidence. You can say what you want to say about Aaron Rodgers, but I watched him make some throws that I'm just like, wow, right? Period. If you want to be a real fan, you can't hate because you're a Minnesota Viking fan. He's a great quarterback. Period. He's a Hall of Famer, and I don't have to. He's amazing because he's unwavered. He's not afraid to take risks. So when you think about play to play, the biggest issue with Kirk Cousins is his lack of consistent confidence. If you look at his numbers, he doesn't turn the ball over from an interception standpoint. Right. So if you look at that quarterback rating, I think back in the day, 158.3, if you threw the ball once for 50 yards and a touchdown, right, it gets you a perfect QB rating. Right. What the QB rating doesn't take into account is fumbles. Well, the other stat does. So if you add those up, the turnovers he accounts for. So it looks pretty on paper because you don't really see the fumbles there when you look at a quarterback's numbers. You see the interceptions. So he doesn't take a ton of risks because he holds on to the ball too long, because he doesn't want to take the risks. So he takes a lot of sacks. And because he has no pocket poise, you have to throw him with statistics about the amount of turnovers and fumbles he's had. Like he is the current leader, I think, over the past 3 years.
So you're talking about the passer rating.
Yeah, I'm talking about why first
the 158.3. Yeah. That's the passer rating because that doesn't consider the fumbles. No. The reason it doesn't consider fumbles is and QBR does is because back in the day and now evolving again, which is hilarious because fucking football's super cyclical. For anyone that's confused what the fuck we're talking about and why there's a difference, QBR measures your ability as a back, meaning quarterback, because they run with the football. Where your passer rating, you can have a perfect passer rating of 158.3 if you step on the field for 2 plays, your first one is a fumble and it gets recovered for a safety, and then your second play is a fucking 1 yard, maybe somehow breakout run, dude goes to the 1 yard line, Derrick Henry style, gets tackled, and then you throw a 1 yard touchdown pass.
Yeah, exactly.
158.3 passer rating. The reason is because as a passer, you were perfect. That's the problem, is people actually started using that as a metric that mattered, correct? That's kind of what you're getting at?
That is exactly what I'm getting at. So
okay.
when I talk
just to clear it up for anybody that was confused.
So when I talk about the 158.3, we're talking about the quarterback rating. In most cases, the quarterback with the highest rating typically won the award, right? Like if it came down to 2 quarterbacks, winning that award for rating was a big deal, right? So if you just look at statistics because you think that you want to, you
Which might
just
be
like
fine
him.
if it's like the only final tiebreaker.
Yeah,
everything's tied and it's fine. We'll use the pass rating, but you're saying it was like a much higher on the poll of equity.
So when you look at his numbers, in basically Washington, it's easy to just look at the numbers and not think like, well, what does he have? He had 2 All-Pros on his O-line. He had Deshaun Jackson, who Chris Carter quoted as saying the best deep threat in the league at one point was Deshaun Jackson, right? So he had Deshaun Jackson. He had All-Pro tight end in Reed.
Jordan Reed,
right? And just overall the scheme. Again, 3 of those coordinators, approximately, are head coaches for very successful offenses. So he came in a system that was able to move the ball, and you can look at the same thing with RG3, right? Like their system, their demand for excellence. RG3 got benched because they didn't feel he had the.
Well, he got injured.
Well, he got injured, but he got benched because remember he went out there, as like thinking I'm the franchise quarterback, and his head coach called him out. He said, "Well, you know what? Maybe you don't drop back 5 yards when we say drop back 2 yards." He just completely chopped him up from a technique standpoint, from like what he's doing in the pocket wrong. He called him out, and then that kind of gave way to Kirk Cousins, and Kirk had a fire lit. He had something to prove, and when you have something to prove, you're more motivated and focused on trying to prove people wrong.
Right.
And I think that there was a lot of that going on in Washington, but if all you have to do is do yourself a favor and look at the lowlights on YouTube of Kirk Cousins, and you'll realize his low lights are the same issues that he has in Minnesota: holding on to the ball too long, just being completely oblivious to outside pressure, because he's focused on the one read he makes. So, and everybody thinks this is like a skill that you hone in on. The most compelling argument, though, is you have to ask yourself, why didn't Washington re-sign him? And they can say what they want to say about the quarterback position, but it also says they'd rather be rolling dice than be stuck in a long-term deal with Kirk Cousins. That's what they felt. That's why they didn't re-sign him. They didn't see him as a long-term solution.
But they continuously
franchised him because he was doing just enough to say, give him one more shot. That's what the franchise offer is. Give him another shot.
Theoretically.
That's
how we
and it goes up. Yeah, it goes up 5% each year, somewhere around there. Some arbitrary. I can't remember the number, right?
Well, yeah. And in case anyone's confused, the best of my knowledge is, and this may not even be true anymore, but it's probably higher. But it's like an average of the top 5 position. Okay, yeah. And I thought it was 10. Whatever. Like they basically take the top players in the league and average their salaries together, and you get that guaranteed for 1 year. Exactly. And remember Darrelle Revis fucking took that and ran with that beyond the franchise tag and started signing 1-year deals because he could max out availability.
The thing about it, too, is like when you get your franchise deals, the entire contract is guaranteed provided you show up. Right. I think there's a stipulated the amount of games you have to play, but it isn't derived from a signing bonus plus incentives, right? It's guaranteed money. So with Kurt, for the first time in history, we guaranteed his contract, and we guaranteed his contract because we had a lot of tough decisions to make.
So we basically gave him 3 franchise deals,
unprecedented, right?
In one contract.
Yeah, exactly, and we guaranteed the entire contract. So for Kurt, that was a blessing. It's never happened before. He knew coming in that he had high expectations, but. So now you start to look at numbers about should a quarterback get success? Should they be blamed for a loss? And my answer is, if they contributed, then yeah.
Hell yeah.
Right? I mean, if you contributed to the loss, then you should be blamed. And this is where watching the game is going to show you and give you an understanding of that. So if you look at just the stats and say, well, 30 touchdowns, blah, 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 right? Who's to say that a good quarterback wouldn't go in there and throw 50 or 60, right? I mean, that's the element. So when I brought up those other offenses, like your Kansas City offense, right, that Andy Reid was under, those offenses put up points.
Right.
It did. That's a system, but he knows the right guys for a system. Period. Mm-hmm. So, if you use those stats, it's like, okay, this is a problem because they're not telling. And if you're not doing your due diligence as a fan, and you just want to argue because you like the idea that they signed him, then you're going to do that too. Well, now there's this other stat that's a bit more telling, right? And this stat measures the backer, right, the quarterback, on what he does by each play. And that is an incredible stat because now you can understand if he sucked, he was below 30 or below 40, right? If he borderline okay, he wasn't making plays, but right at 45, that's like an average quarterback, right? That'd be like a 72 quarterback rating in the old days, right? Like
in Madden,
yeah, or in life. I mean, quarterbacks, right? You could have a rookie quarterback do that, and that's not that bad because of the way defenses were geared back then.
Oh, you're saying the passer rating?
Yeah, the passer rating.
So 45 QBR is like a
you'd
72.
have to say, you'd have to say like 77, like serviceable.
Gotcha.
So you know that, but when that score starts dropping below,
quarterbacks were putting up like a good quarterback had a passer rating of like 90.
Yeah, 90 was good, and because the quarterback percent is heavily weighed on completions or completion percentage, as is the most weighed stat in that. So you can have a high completion percentage, right? And most teams do because it's easier to pass. So you'll see a guy have 65%. That's why every quarterback is crazy. If you look at it now, like Eli Manning has like a lifetime quarterback rating of like 92,
right?
Which would have been great in 1997 or 95. Like you could win MVP with that number. But now it's off the chart. So they went to a different metric because the game evolves.
Right.
And this metric is able to always say like this number. See, if that number is lower than this, your quarterback had a problem.
So
in this
less
game.
than a 30 is like bad. You get around 45, that's average, like a 77 passer rating. In the era that we just,
I'm gonna let me back up. Because you can, the elites will have like an 81. You see something at 81, that's incredible.
The QBR.
Yeah, that means he is. You can look at that number and say this guy is indicative of the success, right, of this offense right here. You can see it because it means he's making favorable plays, getting first downs. He's throwing first down, making great decisions. And that is why I got to go back to the stat. When you understand success, you can think about the Vikings going 13-3 in one of my favorite years. And the argument with Case Keenum is people will like to look at, well, look what he did with Denver. Look what he did with Washington. How successful are those teams? How many holes do they have in that boat, right? These aren't successful teams. But the argument is if you take an average quarterback and put him on a good team, right, what are his numbers going to be, right? And so when you go back to San Francisco and look at these quarterbacks that were just average quarterbacks, they put up good numbers.
Right.
But in each cases, they got benched from using that stat. So when you look at, the Vikings' decision to sign him, it was based on just rolling dice because you had what's his name, Case Keenum, who some very important stats. He was the number one rated quarterback under pressure that season. Case Keenum, not Tom Brady, not Drew Brees. Case Keenum. He was number 2 overall behind, I think, Tom Brady in that stat in total QBR. So, where the Vikings messed up is that warrants another shot. But all the scoring Viking fans did is talk about the Eagles game, and it's like they were looking for the one game to blame them. When a week before we just got done witnessing a miracle. Come on, every Viking fan, this is a part of history. A miracle is what we got to witness. Like something we're going to talk about that day for the rest of our lives, right? Even if it was a buzzkill the very next week, we witnessed something.
That's what, to me, it's been tarnished.
Yeah,
because of what happened.
But it can't be because for one day in my life, I felt a level of bliss over the Vikings I had never experienced. That was incredible, right? And if we allow the negativity of that situation of just the overall picture, it was a beautiful season, man. Like I saw an underdog step up, man. I'll always have a place for Case Keenum because
but that's kind of like I feel like we're kind of talking about like this love-hate relationship thing, and in this case we're kind of like, I had like one really beautiful day with Charlie Manson before all that went
but
down.
It wasn't a day though, right? And the Viking fans look at it like
it was a moment,
man. No, look,
it was a moment in a game.
What you got to witness throughout that season when Case Keenum took over is the second-rated quarterback in the entire league.
There was something special about that season.
And you got to witness what? Like the number 1 rated quarterback under pressure. Okay, so if we can go back to that season, what happens for us real Viking fans, right, is when we know it's too good to be true, we're the last person or people to put our feet in the hot water, right? We wait and we wait and we wait, and each week, and as a real Viking fan, the anxiety you have between each game, because Case Keenum would do all these great things. You're like, but our luck's going to run out. We can't win it with this guy. It's going to run out. And then it happens again and again. And then you're hearing commentators say, Case Keenum had a perfect rating in the second half of the Falcon game. What? He did? How did that just slip over everybody's head? Or he starts throwing these passes, and initially
4 touchdowns against the Bucs
and against Washington, right? So when you look at Case Keenum and you go back, when he needed to make plays, he did, but people just didn't have faith. But the one thing I loved about Case is he had faith in himself.
One thing we talked about before the podcast, and we've talked about this a couple times, that I think is really interesting, is through that season, Zimmer
Oh, yeah, that's right.
never backed Case Keenum.
Never.
Every week, people asked him, so is he your guy going forward? And he would never say, yep, he's our guy, blah, 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 blah. He kept saying, like, behind the scenes and inside interviews that, like, he was getting lucky on a lot of these throws, and he's like, it's one bad throw away from him losing us a game, blah, 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 blah. Now, fast forward to now, where we have a quarterback, for all intents and purposes, this shit is not working. And I don't think it's necessarily Kirk's fault.
Mm-hmm.
I'm blaming the coaching staff and the organization, not for not being competent at the game or being able to call plays or drafting the wrong guys.
Yeah.
Is what I have a problem with is when we do see spotty play and shitty play from our quarterback, Zimmer won't hold him accountable, which leads me to believe, okay, well, then maybe there's some nuances to the game plan and the execution, and it's not his fault on that play or all of these plays. Maybe every single play, because who else he's never called out is Harrison Smith. And I've seen Harrison Smith look real bad on a few plays until I watched some game film, and I'm like, wait a minute, it looks like they're arguing, this guy's actually out of position. What the fuck? I'm super confused here. And then all of a sudden, a few days later, it pops up. Pete Bursich breaks it down. He goes, no. Harrison Smith was in the right spot. The other guy blew his coverage, and he tried to compensate and go the other direction and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. So I'm wondering if there's something nuanced with that's going on the offensive side of the ball that we're just not aware of, some insider football stuff. But the one thing that disturbs me more than anything else is that he is arguably, I don't even know if it would be arguable, he's the best quarterback we've had since Favre.
This is why this whole topic warrants a real deep discussion. Is like, so we got to look at first. We got to talk about the fault right now. To blame Zimmer with the amount of adversity he's had on his D-line, right? Is kind of tough, right? Under the given circumstances, you had players who did something unprecedented. They sat out the season because they could, right? So you had a defensive tackle that you really expected big things out of. Matter of fact, he took a lot of credit for the Ravens' great run defense the previous year. So when you signed him, that was a pretty big deal, right? To anybody who's a Viking fan, it was a big deal to get him. He's got
the respect in the Madden ratings. He's 92 overall.
92 overall, right? So
it's impressive.
You look at the defensive ends, all pro. Well, you don't have those guys, and you didn't plan for it. It happened. What you planned for was all the other players you lost, the corners. So you replace them with 2 rookie corners that I like. They give us I know they get beat deep a couple of times, but the one guy is great against the run. He's already, as a rookie, able to make tackles in the backfield. And if you look at his highlights, he did the exact same thing in college.
Dantzler, that's my guy, dude. I fucking flipped out when we drafted
Both of them play the game like that. They're physical, not afraid to play.
You talking about Gladney? Are you talking about Hughes?
No, Hughes is out of the equation. I know he was a first-round pick, but nah. The rookies we have, Hughes is a third-year guy, right? So when I look at the rookies,
you're not a big fan of Holden Hill, so it can't be.
I don't think the world is. I'm sorry, Holden, right? But anybody, at least the Viking world, You look pretty horrible.
Get your life together, Holton.
Yeah, Robert Tate, maybe? Was it Robert Tate? Was he the wide receiver that they converted to a cornerback?
Dude, I can name worse ones. Waswa Saranga.
Oh, yeah, Sawanga, that's right. But hey, look, any cornerback in the Dennis Green era was just like, can we stop a pass? Look, I'm not going to digress, but I remember the Vikings defense was so bad. We went games, that plural S at the end, without forcing a punt. Do you know what that's like? Yeah. You know how frustrating it is. It's 3rd and 13, and these teams are getting it.
Yep, like they would at least score a field goal on every drive.
But yeah, there were times when it just came down to who had the ball. We had a great offense,
and we won.
We did, but we also
won
lost
some of those games.
We lost so many games by field goals. Like I'm telling you, field goals has been like the thing that's killed us more. Like here it is, right here. That's right, because we couldn't stop Matthew Stafford. Here we go. Yep, there you go, Matt. You got it. Yep, 65-yarder, no problem. It's like every kicker comes in, and the luck that our kickers have is like the opposite of what they have. They have some other type of juju, right? Because they make everything. And as evident, look no further than Gostkowski. That's right. Apparently he's a Hall of Fame kicker because he kicked for a team by the name of the Patriots. That's right. Well, guess what? Against Minnesota, this guy in a Titans uniform had a career game. I mean, who would have thought Gostkowski out of all the
struggling?
Been struggling. And not only that, but like this, he's a Hall of Famer. You want to talk about a guy who can kick under pressure? This is him.
So instead of being the guy that's like, no, it's over. No,
career
hold
time.
on. Wait a minute.
Oh no! What did they say?
Like Hulk Hogan when they used to try to choke him out, they'd lift up his arm and drop. Like Gostkowski had 2 of the drops, and they were about to drop the 3rd one, and then here came the Vikings game.
Exactly.
He just comes back to life. The fans start cheering.
Hulkamaniac time.
Hulkamania. Fucking Gostkowski's about to go off for the rest of the season. No, is what'll happen is he'll go right back in the tank. Until they play the Vikings again next season for some godforsaken reason.
But dude, that's the biggest.
They have to switch up the schedule.
It is, man. But it's like that is kind of the epitome of what it's like to
4 seasons from now.
Be a fan.
He'll come out of retirement for one game 4 seasons
and do it against us.
9 field goals in a single game.
I mean, look, see, we're digressing, but I'm going to go back to just understand that we've seen horrible defenses. I watched Jim Miller. Okay.
We're not digressing.
Jim Miller.
Evolving.
I just want you to know Jim Miller, who right? Some backup, right?
We can only talk shit about Kirk Cousins for so long.
But Jim Miller, Jim Harbaugh, they all had career games back to back against Minnesota. And I want you to understand this is Jim Harbaugh in a Chargers uniform. Okay, not
the Colts.
No, not a Colts uniform. No, this is just he had a career game.
Because he played for
on the
4 or 5 teams.
On the down streak of his career, or downstroke of his career game. Yeah. Okay. Well, then we go to Chicago, and I don't know if anybody can remember the 90s, but Chicago was cursed. Every year was just like a horrible team. Every year.
I mean, they did manage to go like 8-8 every year, though.
No.
You're talking the Dave Wanstead years.
Yeah, I'm talking. I'm going back. Curtis Enos, right? Dave Wanstead.
Dude, they fucking went to the playoffs.
No, look. When you look at Chicago, it's like suck. Okay, and then suck. Super Bowl, right? Chicago is a team that just has. I mean, think about it, right? You can look at how far they've been in the playoffs, right?
It's hard to criticize them though. When look at our team.
But the Vikings, though, we have, and we talked about this before. During that time, Dennis Green got us to the playoff. I didn't know this, but you and Scotty, informed me that we got to the playoffs like 6 or 7 seasons.
Yeah, in a
Dennis
row.
Green.
Yep.
So that I'm basing my understanding off that.
Lost in the first round, but yeah,
lost in the first round.
That's true.
But that's what the Vikings defenses were back then. So again, hard time fan, 80s babies, that's what we saw from the Vikings in the 90s under the Dennis Green era of football. But now when we, look at defenses, you can't really blame anybody for it, but honestly, so Zimmer does not call offenses. You know why? It's not his game. I think he started off as a D-backs coach in Dallas and then went to the Bengals with Marv Lewis. He doesn't call the offenses. So that has to be taken into account, that he hires somebody to do it. And what happens typically is when the offense isn't responding, he's not afraid to fire somebody. He's not afraid to get him out of the door. I mean, look what happened with Norv Turner.
Yep.
Right? And then look what happened with the other kid we got from Philadelphia, the quarterback's coach from Philadelphia. They were out. DeFilippo, right? They were out because he heard the complaints. He felt the same way. We need to run the ball more, and it wasn't happening, right? But now you got a guy like Kubiak who he has a lot of credentials. You know, it's hard to. Now I don't agree because when I look at some of the teams, I don't give him credit for that, right? I don't give him credit for having a great offense. You know, like the years that Peyton Manning was doing Peyton Manning out there in Denver. You know, setting records. That was Jim Fox, right? John Fox, yeah, right. The old Carolina coach.
Oh, Whitey.
Yeah, I liked him though.
Oh, Whitey. And what I mean by that is his hair.
Yeah, white hair.
Oh, Whitey.
Always had hair like
Looked
that.
Looked like Elmer Fudd kind of.
He did. So yeah, like just thinking about what happened out there in Denver in those offenses. It's. I don't give Kubiak credit, but I guess he's been around.
Even when they won the Super Bowl, that was Fangio's defense that really did it. And then you had Manning on the offense, so even though he couldn't throw the ball more than 12 yards, you still had his mind as the offensive coordinator. So
the problem with that is the Super Bowl MVP went to a defensive player, Von Miller, because the defense is what got him there to the Super Bowl.
Right.
They just had to have a game managing quarterback, and Peyton Manning said, "I got to be a game. I got a bad shoulder. This is it for me." But I think he threw one touchdown in that game, but he didn't get MVP because the quarterback wasn't the MVP of the team.
Right.
See, the way it normally works is typically a MVP is on a playoff team, right? And a lot of times the same MVP goes to the Super Bowl and gets MVP. You know, it happens like that now. But in this case, that defense was special. So I'm not really a Kubiak guy. I felt like I didn't really like what he did down there in Houston. He didn't have a successful team. The offense was okay, right? That was Arian Foster days, good old line.
You got to the playoffs with your boy Case Keenum.
Yeah, I don't accredit him. Hold up, as the Viking? He wasn't here. He came in the next year as an advisor.
No, I'm saying down in Houston.
Was it? No, Matt Schaub, I think, was their quarterback.
Dude, I'll show you. Hold on. I'll show you.
Was it like an 8-8 Houston?
And they made it to the playoffs. I think they even won a playoff game because.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I know this because here I'll just try to show.
Well, I know he came in. That could be very well possible, right?
I'm gonna guess. I don't think this is correct, but I'm gonna guess like 2015.
Yeah, that's like 2013.
I'm gonna say 2015. Houston Texans. Roster first. There's your boy Case Keenum down in Houston.
Yep.
2015. Okay, that was Bill O'Brien, so maybe it was 2014. And maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe
just type 20.
Oh, I went back like I had searched the previous year. That's hilarious. Maybe I'm wrong. No, Case Keenum's still there.
Still there.
And that's still Bill O'Brien down there, though. Oh,
yeah. So, kind of going back, to the point.
When was he drafted? Do you remember? Because you watched that Gruden.
Probably 7-8 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, he's still there in 13. And it's still Bill O'Brien. Jeez, I didn't realize Bill O'Brien. Oh, wait. Is this current? Is that what's going on here? Yeah, this is all current information.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, look, Kubiak was in Houston at the time that Kirk Cousins was. Case Keenum was there. The element with Case or any of these quarterbacks, as we're trying to discuss, is who warrants the blame. So when we look at the Vikings right now, it's obvious that there's some dissension, some inability to be on the same page on offense. Right? There just is. We know that. And then you got to dissect that, right? Why would it be his fault? So give supporting elements as to why it would be this person's fault, right? So a good thing that we could talk about would be like the safeties. But then we go back the previous year and realize that in the last regular season game, we gave up a safety against Chicago. So the streak really started last season, of apparently safeties.
I was losing my mind about this. Every time we would call, I'd be like, I don't give a fuck until we figure this one thing out.
So, is it Kurt's fault? No. Here's why it's not his fault. Because the offensive coordinator has to know what he has, right? You don't have a quarterback that's looking like you can tell that Kirk Cousins did everything in his power, right? Risk injury to not get that safety. Mm-hmm. Like guys were on his back. This is how quarterbacks break legs. So you know that he cares about the position. And if you don't think that he cares, when Kirk Cousins is under pressure, he tends to do what he does in life, which is seem to tense up, right? Because what you see from people is wavered confidence, unwavered confidence. And that's what makes the great player. So with Kurt, it's a matter of confidence. It's a matter from what is his source of confidence? His faith. And he's got to use that faith to continue to find the answer as to what is going to drive him. How is he going to see how success in the NFL attributes to success in life as a Christian? Right. What I see is a person who is playing with, a certain level of tension because he understands he's hypersensitive to his numbers and to his turnovers. He knows that, right? But the irony to it is he can't play unless he lets go of that fear. So when you think about a quarterback's ability to improv, realize that if he takes a hit or takes a sack, he's gonna get yelled at on the sideline. So you have to be able to not be afraid or be unwavered, to have a short-term memory. And Kurt doesn't seem to have that, right? He doesn't have that ability to make that adjustment, how to take a game that isn't really going for him and then step it up in the fourth quarter. That's been the knock on him. And see, the issue is when you say that, it's just like being a T-Wolves fan. All I would hear about now, I watched the games. I was a diehard fan. And you know what I saw with Kevin Garnett in the fourth quarter? Nothing. I saw games where it wasn't like watching Tim Duncan or Chris Webber. Right. He didn't get the ball. He didn't demand for the ball. Like, then they'll bring up a Milwaukee game where he hit a game winner, right? But when you talk about your franchise player, I should have games. Oh, and then what people do is they talk about that one Game 7 or Game 6 against Sacramento. That's what I hear when we talk about Kevin Garnett in clutch. Oh, what about that Sacramento game?
He didn't become that guy until and he never really became that guy. But he was more that guy in Boston.
He never was that guy, right? Paul Pierce was that guy. What Kevin Garnett was?
Well, and then they had what's his name too,
and Ray Allen, right?
Yeah,
but
Ray
but
Allen.
Again, what he proved is like, it wasn't about carrying the franchise. It was about who's.
I was wrong, by the way. Just to put a bow on this real quick. I mean, no, hold on. They went 9-7. The previous season they went 2-14, and then in 2014 with Case Keenum they went 9-7.
Okay, all right.
And it was the first year under Bill O'Brien.
Okay,
but he was a Gary Kubiak.
Got it. Okay. So, but when you think about what your clutch performer is to do, they have to have a certain level of confidence, and you can see it in Dak Prescott. If they need a drive at the end of a game, they're in the game still, right? And you can't knock him. If you're watching the games as a fan of just the game of football, you see that these quarterbacks have that uncanny ability, right? Where it doesn't really exist, in a guy, that. You have to have that. And so I didn't feel like Kevin Garnett necessarily had that, right? But that's okay because he found a fit for him, right, in Boston, and they had a small little dynasty for about 3 seed. Went to the finals twice, 1-1, lost one to the Lakers, right? So, the Vikings and this Kirk Cousins ordeal took place because of our inability to really determine if his weak points could be hit in our offense. So when we had Case Keenum, it just so happened when you watch the QB Club or this John Gruden special, right? If you watch the episode with Case Keenum, you're getting a guy who is deemed as some expert at quarterbacking, right, or quarterbacks, and he's breaking down like the intangibles that Case Keenum had. And it just so happens that in that offense, he had the ability to buy himself some time, as evident of him being the number one rated quarterback under pressure. So he had that ability to just buy himself some time to make throws, and it worked. And just when you thought he couldn't throw a ball, he threw like a zipper, and there a wide receiver was. So
he basically made. I mean, don't get me wrong. Thielen had kind of a breakout.
Thielen was an all-pro.
He had a breakout year the year before with Bradford, but people were still like, you know, he had a good year with Bradford. It wasn't until the season with Keenum, and then Keenum basically made Stephon Diggs look like an all-star.
Yeah, you know, exactly. But you could see that. But understand, like, both these guys were low drafts, or undrafted. But
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm getting at.
So I'm agreeing. What I'm saying is, like, so think about what they were doing at practice. Think about what I saw as a relationship that they had. Right. They clearly they had thrown balls at each other, you know, caught received from each other, right, or pass received.
Yeah, I think the big knock from the organization on the practice field was that their offense, they could rarely get the deep ball because Keenum just didn't have the strength to hit like Diggs deep in stride. You know, and so they felt the offense was too predictable and one dimensional. Like
who felt that though?
Routes. Like, this is what I heard from the inner
so
from
you know,
some of my people.
You know that statistic though we talked about, Jared?
I hear you. I'm just letting you know.
No, not that. No. So apparently the Vikings were in the top 5 teams of explosive plays that season.
Yeah, but those were all made by broken tackles and fucking backyards. Yeah. And I'm not knocking it. I'm not saying they were right in making this decision. I'm trying to think if I can remember all of the things that led to the rationale. Because all of a sudden, like, you get fucking Cousins in here, and we're hitting a lot of deep balls. Yeah, it's a lot of the other shit that's missing. I'm not saying Cousins is better, but now we get that part. So it seems like, going back to what I was saying earlier, like, Zimmer got something he wanted out of his quarterback, but he won't seem to hold him accountable like he does all the other
because
players.
he can't.
And he doesn't do it with Harrison Smith either, but like I said, I think in the Harrison Smith example, it's because it's almost never actually his mistake. I think he's one of the best players around. And with Cousins, it's way more egregiously obvious that, no, this was his mistake. So why do they, if he's this obviously bad to the rest of us, why are they extending him, and why won't they hold him accountable for his deficiencies?
Because, you know, hindsight's always 20/20 after the fact, right? So what we were all hoping for was that New Orleans game in real time, right, was the game that got the monkey off his back, because I think what we can attribute some of his lack of success is psychological. It's the game is deeper. Like, what made that work? What I was saying about Adam Thielen and Case Keenum was the fact that these guys both probably could relate to each other, right?
Right.
Like, I really think that they threw balls. I mean, that played catch together.
2 undrafted draft.
Yeah, like just
literally, they were both undrafted guys.
So I know a friend, for instance, who like
Case was undrafted, right?
Possibly.
Oh, God damn it.
Or a late rounder, right? But either way, all-time leader at one point in passing yards, I think, in college. Did you know that?
Yeah, at his school.
Well, I mean, in college history.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought it was like at his school or in his.
I thought it was college. I could be wrong. That could be one crazy stat for me to throw out there, but
you're probably right, because there's something at 14,000 passing yards in. Oh, that's his pro career. 85 passer rating. So that number's not very good in modern day NFL. An 85 overall passer rating, but that's not the same stat we were just talking about. We were talking about his college career. Or I'm sorry, we were talking about QBR. Now I'm looking at his college career.
Well, just if he was the all-time pass. Okay.
19,000 yards. He played 5 years. How did he play 5 years? He must have got a medical red shirt. He must have gotten injured one of these seasons and got a medical red shirt.
And kept his eligibility.
Yep. In 2010, he only had 64 attempts. He must have got injured.
Yeah, so you can see, like,
he still had five touchdowns on 64 attempts. Yeah. That's like one every 12. Yeah. One every 12 throws went in the end zone.
But one of the things that John Gruden said about him was his guts.
Look at these numbers, dude. In college, 44-11, 44-15, 48-5. I mean,
yeah. So I wanted to touch on that though. So like when you watched his highlights, and again, you can look at his numbers and see he's got highlights. For one, he had great timing with his receivers, and John Gruden pointed that out. He also talked about. He says, so I want you to understand how John Gruden sees this. Right? He pauses the clip and he says, "You're about to get blasted by that DN right there, and you know it, but yet you stay in the pocket. Why did you do it?" And he's like, because I was supposed to make the throw. Like it was that simple. It was Forrest Gump. Like it wasn't a long drawn out answer. It was like because I was supposed to make the throw.
My favorite moment where somebody asked him about that was during the Viking season, and he made just this incredible just lob.
I remember that.
And Adam Thielen comes out of nowhere and grabs it and runs, and it goes for like a 13-yard, 17-yard gain, gets the first down. No one's seen it coming. And they ask him about it after the game. They're like, so did you see Thielen coming? And he's like, yeah, what do you think? I just threw it into space.
But see,
of course I seen him coming. Me and Kevin started laughing so fucking hard, dude. But
that's what makes it so funny is like if you
think I just threw it into space?
If you think he's just getting lucky, then it looked like he just threw the ball in the air. But what it shows you is how he processes a play.
Yeah, he's seen him coming.
But under pressure, there again, we got a stat to prove that. He knew he was going to be open because he could buy himself time in the pocket, and it worked for this combination. So literally, I think the issue with Kurt was they tried to build an offense around him, not knowing that the reason he succeeded in Washington is because he's a I'm going to use this word, people, so you understand, but he is a system quarterback. And I say this because you don't see a ton of command from a system quarterback, or is he at the line of scrimmage? Is he trying to see if there's a blitz? Right, they're blitzing
a Tom Brady
or any quarterback who's a franchise back. You can look at Phillip Rivers, any one of these guys where you pay them money to say go out there and make plays. Dak Prescott.
I'm saying a non-system quarterback, a Tom Brady,
bingo, right?
Aaron Rodgers, like the real commander in chief out there. Those are the guys that you're talking.
Where they're adding their value to the offense, right?
You're not seeing that from Kirk Cousins.
So what I see he's only as good as the play that's called, right? And so So now we think about the offensive coordinator that got fired, right? DeFilippo, right? And then in steps this other guy, Stefanski? Stefanski, right? So in steps Stefanski. Okay, there were question marks. But apparently
undrafted 2012.
There you go. But apparently he was good.
Stefanski was his quarterback's coach,
yeah.
Right?
But he stepped in. He was a long time with the organization.
Yeah. But that was the year he finally got his shot to be quarterback's coach.
And then the next year, look what happens. He's a head coach for Cleveland.
OC.
No. Stefanski is the head offensive. He is the head coach.
Right, but he was quarterback coach.
Yeah,
under
and then
Filippo.
Offensive coordinator for us. He took over interim, right, for that year that we fired.
Yep,
and then he came in as a full season.
Yep.
Yeah, and then he got a coaching gig.
Yep. And
right.
And so last year Stefanski was the OC and made Kirk Cousins finally wins a playoff game. Stefanski's the OC.
Bingo.
And so
right?
that ties into something we were bringing up earlier is the inconsistency. It's not all his fault either, because whether you look at fucking Washington or you look here in Minnesota, he's had a new offensive coordinator virtually every single season.
But where he lucks out, though, is he's had one that's apparently so good that they become head coaches. Matter of fact, I don't know if this is a stat, so if we have anybody watching this that care to backs this up, but I bet if you were to look at how many quarterbacks that threw 4,000 yards under different coordinators, it'd probably be him. But, Kirk Cousins. Because you got to think about what happened in Washington, what happened in Minnesota.
Right.
He went through, but the irony
is a testament to his abilities as well.
But here's the problem. All these guys have become head coaches, right? So you could look at it like that, but then you think to yourself, all these guys are head coaches. All of them have been now we look at Shermer, right? What does he do? Head coach, right? That's what the Vikings
Where did he end up?
The Giants. He got fired, right, from the Giants. But sure, I don't know. Oh, after that, Broncos, I think.
Is he out in Denver? Damn.
I think he's out. Yeah.
Good for him.
Possibly. So, when I look at it, I'm happy for Case Keenum. I hope that Baker Mayfield gets injured because
I think Keenum will just take that job eventually.
Yeah, we'll see. But it just shows you that somebody has faith in him.
Mayfield looks good right now, so I don't think.
But think about it. Like what they made I think it was a trade from Washington to get Case Keenum.
No, I think it was a free agent.
Possibly, I don't know. But
hold on, we got it up right here. Let's find out.
But regardless, though, they made a decision to bring him on because they know what he's about. They know he's a capable quarterback. on a good team of being great on a good team, not good on a good team. So when you look at Kurt, it's like, well,
yeah, he was traded to Washington, free agent, signing to Cleveland.
Yeah. So when you look at Kurt's body of work, if you look at it from a standpoint of like he succeeds because this is why, it's like politics. You can paint that picture a different way. But
here's the question though. If this dude's so good, how does he bounce around? I'm looking at this. Houston, St. Louis, Houston, St. Louis, well, LA by that point. Minnesota, Denver, Washington.
I can answer that.
Now into Cleveland.
I can answer that because he's cheap. Because he's an undrafted free agent.
If he's this good, why doesn't one team stick with him for more than a season?
Because he's good, he's on a roster. He's not a practice squad guy. He's on a roster right now. Because what's the sexy thing to do? We talked about this with Scotty, right?
Yeah, but when he signed with Cleveland, he signed a 3-year, $18 million contract. That's $6 million a year.
No.
That's a
I think that was
contract.
No, that was $18 million a year, man.
Maybe.
Could be, right? With Cleveland, you're right. Okay, so my point,
$6 million a year.
But my point is that's a backup, right? That's backup. He's a backup. So for Case Keenum to be a backup and still be getting paid, you know why? Because people are saying, are you going to sign him to a 10-year, 100? No, you're not, because you do that with your draft picks. How many quarterbacks have you seen that undrafted have that Kurt Warner story? One, Kurt Warner.
Right.
So understand because he's still equitable. He's a backup. He's not a third string guy. They understand, and look who got him. A guy who has close ties with him that came from where? Minnesota. So us as fans aren't the only people that believe in Case Keenum, right? Apparently his head coach does, who signed him as a backup, right? That's like, nah, look, I'm coming to get you because I know what you can do. You showed us. Everybody thought it was luck. Everybody thought you weren't good enough, and now we got we got the Broncos season. Were they a good team? Not really, but it didn't stop him from standing in the pocket trying to make throws. What did he have? He didn't have two All-Pro receivers, but when he did,
you're
right,
Denver.
But when he did, what did he do? Right, he won us games. Not put up pretty numbers, but there were so many drives that year we went 13-3. Where we'd have like a 13-play drive, 8 minutes long.
Right.
Like that happened all the time that year. Without
Peterson or Delvin Cook.
Right. So we had, you're right. Yep. And we had McKinnon and big guy from the Saints. Yeah. And they did a great job in the second half.
CJ Ham.
And CJ Ham is a fullback.
So we didn't even have our best player
to make it happen, yeah.
And we had a great season.
So I mean, I would tend to think, but now you got
McKinnon did go on to look like a monster though, and he's doing pretty good.
He did that year got him paid because he signed with San Francisco and he's been injured a couple years. But what makes that situation so special is there are just so many levels you have to. You want to gamble on an undrafted guy, or you want to go with the guy who seems to be the sexy pick, right? This guy's going to make the turn, right? How is he going to do it? Because he can throw the deep ball, and I'm pretty sure DiFilippo was probably excited until he realized what he got. He didn't have a guy to run the run read out. What's the acronym again?
Oh, the RPO.
Yeah, the RPO.
Pass option.
Correct. He didn't have a guy to do that, right? So they had this very sophisticated playbook. Now think about this for a second. If you are a superstar, that means you got options, right? So DiFilippo went into it like, this is what I came from, right? I came from a system where your quarterback is making multiple reads, where he understands the offense better than anybody, right? That's what I saw from Filippo, right? Is the ability to create an offense that is garnered toward your quarterback. But there's one problem that if you look at Kurt Cousins' lowlights, what you'll see are the same things you saw in Minnesota.
Yeah, I guess the big issue I have with the organization, and not necessarily Kirk Cousins himself, is we continuously, for literally about 20 years now, have built our offense around somebody
backups
other than our quarterback.
Yeah, or backups.
We built from Adrian Peterson, which what was he drafted? 2004, 2005,
somewhere around there.
2006, 2007, something like
Yeah.
that. So minimum 13 years. We've built our offense. And why I say go back to 20 years is because I bring up Ticey and the Randy ratio. You know, we're building these offenses around our best quote-unquote player, but your best player doesn't touch the ball every single play. Your quarterback does. So you need to build your offense around your best player. And I've noticed a theme. Like, you look at the New Englands of the world, you look at the Green Bays of the world, teams that historically, when they have the great elite level quarterbacks, they've had a really hard time running the football. I wonder why that is. It might be because they go out of their way to draft pass blocking offensive linemen and receivers
100%.
so they can keep their quarterback upright and he can make throws to open receivers.
I think you said it best early with the O-line, right? Because everybody in a perfect world, you think O-line is about they block. Well, some of them specialize in other places, others don't, right?
Thank you. That's what I'm getting
O-line
at, right?
all day, right?
The Vikings have a tradition, used to have a tradition when Ticey was part of the organization of just drafting great O-linemen all throughout the draft and developing them into Pro Bowlers.
Yeah.
Post-Tice, we've drafted some of the best run blockers in the league for some of the best runners in the league, but we have not been able to draft good offensive linemen, and we are not building our offense around Kirk Cousins, both strengths and his weaknesses. We build it around Dalvin Cook, which is fine until Dalvin Cook is injured, and then the offense is fucked. For example, when he's out, or when a team schemes and figures out how to shut. Hold on, I gotta, because I will fucking snap if I let myself talk about this subject. Phil Jackson. The reason they went to the triangle offense is because no matter how good Jordan was individually, a team can stop one man. It was the Jordan rule. We all know about what the Pistons
or make the other players beat you, which is really the logic behind Jordan. Make somebody else beat you.
Sure.
You'll get your 30, said the Detroit Pistons rules or Jordan rules, whatever. Mm-hmm. Right? Let him get his 35, but we'll make him take a jumper going to his left. No matter what, we're gonna put him on his back. But he's gonna get his, but make him beat you. Make him pass the ball to make his supporting cast beat you. Yeah.
There's a bunch of different shit. And that's why they didn't win. And then once they figured that out, okay, we're gonna build the team around Jordan, and we're going to get him other players and then learn how to get the other playmakers involved in specialized roles. Then all of a sudden they won. Now, I understand there's two different sports.
Well, no. You make a great point. And look, I want to add to this point really quick because when you go back to the Bulls offenses, what you see with the Bulls is big men who could shoot 15-foot, 16-foot jump shots. Bill Winnington, as ugly as his form and as tight as his shorts were, right?
Right.
He had this ability to make timely jumpers, and same with Luke Longley. They could make jump shots because the offense was built around Michael Jordan. What did he create? Mismatches, double teams. And so to kick it to open guys that could make jumpers was how they did it.
Right.
Right? You had centers but because now you got this other guy by Rodman, he's going to do what the centers aren't doing,
right?
Which is rebound and play tough defense. So it was a genius idea.
Extending the play.
Of course.
That's what it really is.
So
let me get the ball back, so if we don't make it on the first shot, we get another one. Because when Rodman showed up, man, it was like, oh my God. Like that was the only way you could beat the Bulls. That was your only strategy for years, was like, okay, as long as we can out-rebound him and hold on to the ball and keep it out of Jordan's hand, if he misses the first shot, don't give him a second. Right? Yeah. And then they got Rodman, and it's like, now we'll get a second and a third and a fourth.
Here's the irony to that. But check it out, though. So we go back to that signing. I believe that it was a trade with San Antonio for Will Perdue, right? So they made that trade, and I remember it wasn't a big deal because Rodman at this point had started dyeing his hair and really, being what we know as Rodman. He wasn't that guy all the time.
Because they got him from San Antonio.
Yeah, they traded him from for Will Perdue, I believe, from San Antonio, right? And understand that San Antonio,
or was he a free agent?
No, it was a trade. So understand why, because he was becoming the opposite of what David Robinson was, right? Which is David Robinson. Role model Christian, no swearing, right? Mm-hmm. He was the opposite. So they traded him. right? So the equity on Dennis Rodman when the trade was made.
Well, he's kind of a troublemaker.
Yeah, but Phil Jackson
didn't he fail a drug test?
No,
not yet.
Not at that point. But understand for Phil Jackson, he understands how to manage personalities. Right. So he said, no, be that person. I'm not going to try to hold you down. Be that person. As evident for any people who saw the Michael Jordan special, they allowed him to go on vacation. How many coaches would do that in a playoff run? He went on a week hiatus to Vegas.
Yeah,
because Dennis Rodman
missed a game, didn't he?
I don't think he missed a game. No, Dennis Rodman wouldn't miss a game. He put nothing above basketball, but he had another side of him.
I thought he missed one game.
No, he didn't miss any games.
Okay.
But it was probably just a window in time when they had some time off. And
I know he went off and did WCW.
Yeah, and look, and they said Michael.
Went and got him.
No, they said Michael and Phil approved it, right? That's what makes it funny, right? That's Power Mike. Yeah, I approve it. Go ahead, man. Like, think about, that's incredible, right?
But Jordan did admit he kept telling Phil, don't let him go. Because if you let him go, he's not coming back.
But then, so Mike came and got him, right? Mike came and got him.
Yeah.
And, that's what makes that whole, sort of story incredible, is to understand how they put sort of this, I think the words in Congress or in combination of people that you don't really see how it works, right? Look at your centers.
Concert.
But when they play together, no, there's in Congress in
concert.
There's no, that's not what I'm saying.
When everything works in concert, when voices work in concert.
The in Congress combination is like things that shouldn't work. Shouldn't work.
In concert.
Okay. Well, you know what? We got the Google here, and we'll check that one out.
Yeah, we
can learn a little bit too.
Let's do that. Let's see who can Google faster, motherfucker.
Define in Congress. Or incongruous, I think is the word, right? So
congruent.
No, no. I know what congruent is. Two things that are exactly the same, like in geometry with angles. No, I'm talking about
I'm telling you, it's in concert. It's in concert. Idioms. Here it is. Cooperation with someone in aid of someone.
No.
Together in cooperation.
Incongruous, spelled INCONGRUOUS, would be a where is it at here? Behavior not harmonious in character, inconsistent, lacking harmony of parts. So that's why I use the word, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
Makes sense?
Okay, gotcha.
When you look at them on paper, it's kind of a incongruous, I think is how you say it, right? When you look at those combinations of players and you try to stack them against...
I think you said it right the first time, incongruous.
Possibly, I don't know, right? But when you look at those sorts of players together, right, and you try to compare them to all-time greats, you can't do it. It's their cohesiveness. It's how they played as a team. Right, and that's what makes them great. Is it doesn't look like, and the sexy thing is what, signing big free agents, doing all these things, right? Oh, here we go. But a lot of times they lack. You don't need that. What you need is whatever Thielen and Case Keenum had. They had something special, right? You could just see the relationship, and the same with Diggs. He knew how to extend a play to get guys the ball. As evident when you look at like Kyle Rudolph's numbers, right? They've declined every year. And I'm sorry to say, but Kyle Rudolph has a lot left in the tank. How many athletic catches does he have to make to remind you that's what he can do on a consistent basis if you throw him the ball?
Right.
Right? You don't need him to run after catch. But what he can do is if you throw a ball up in space, how many times does he have to show you can Devo guy? He can moss somebody.
So why do we fucking re-sign Kirk Cousins, man? Like, that's what's bugging me. Like, if we know this isn't the guy, then why are we re-signing
Because we got to go back in time and we got to remember what took place. We thought that he was over the hump. And you know what? He still could be. But the question is, we need more consistency out of his play. And he's got to make a decision on how he wants to approach the game every week. Because playing tight, we all see it. He starts forcing balls, right? But understand his biggest issue is his inability to extend plays. Now, I've seen some design rollouts to the right, where he does. But a great quarterback is going to do this not one play. Right? Now, that's a great play, Kurt. No, we're going to see that on a consistent basis.
Like a Case Keenum.
Correct. That's what does a great quarterback do? They make plays. And so
Case Keenum consistently extended plays all season long.
All season long.
With a deficient, because
the same O-line.
Let's talk all of this together. Let's tie all this together. So the point is, in contrast, when making all things equal, you look at a guy like Case Keenum with a porous pass-blocking O-line and a lack of a good running game, and you still had the best quarterback under pressure. You had
the number one offense in rushing attempts that year.
And I think number 2 in overall QBR that year.
Number 2 in overall QBR.
13-3. Minneapolis Miracle. 1 game away from the Super Bowl.
And in all honesty, if let's say if
and I forgot one thing.
What?
A coordinator that knew how to call plays and use him.
Bingo. Or just
all of that.
It just worked, right? Like you had an offensive coordinator who was committed to the run. I think Sherman's out in Denver right now. But you have a quarterback who just understood, or offensive coordinator, the importance of how to make it work with his players.
Versus a team now in Kirk Cousins, who seems to be a system quarterback his game is built on it's a one-read system, or his abilities are built on a one-read deal.
Look for
can't buy time and extend plays when the porous O-line breaks down, and that is grossly shown when I don't know why I just said when like Dalvin Cook is injured or out, or being shut down or whatever.
Fans are going to bring it up, or people watching, they're going to talk about that Denver game, because that's what happens when you have a small sample. They're going to talk about, what about when Dalvin Cook got injured? When you game plan, when you logistically plan to stop a player, your entire scheme has been built on stopping that player.
You leave holes.
So Dalvin Cook is injured. They didn't plan on stopping Kurt. Their whole game plan was stop Dalvin Cook, a home run hitter when he touches the ball. And I'm not exaggerating.
Kirk beat you, and in that game he did.
So, but that game though,
they were up 21-0.
The game plan was stopping Dalvin Cook, not Kurt. Dalvin Cook is your problem. Kurt feeds off the run. He got injured. The game plan was to stop Dalvin Cook. That's what the weekly game plan would have been on defense. Right? Is stop Dalvin Cook. You can't let him get the ball. How do we approach the game? So when you have a game plan that is not really favored to stop the pass, guess what happens? He had a great game. But my point is, when you're a great quarterback, we don't say games. We can sit back and romanticize the idea of all the great plays he makes. I mean, just like if you're a fantasy player, most cases you have a good quarterback on your team, and there's nothing greater than great when you watch him and you have a vested interest on him succeeding.
And I think a lot of guys would also say, well, you don't need a great quarterback. Look at guys like Phil Simms and Eli Manning. They had
different era.
They had average stats in the regular season, and then they have Nick Foles, because he's recent, right? Well, here's the thing, though, man, is like we seen our team get hot and struggle all of last season. We make it to the playoffs. We have another emotional win against the Saints, and then we go on the road and we have a chance. He throws that dime to Diggs to tie the game, and then we shit the bed.
Yeah, and then
see, if you're going to get hot and make the Nick Foles argument, he can't lose in
he's got to keep going.
Yeah, he can't lose he can't immediately flop against San Francisco. That's why we turned on Case Keenum so fast. It was like, okay, we were hot all season, and you only have to win 2 games, and you did the impossible all year, and then you threw this game away. Those 2 interceptions.
But what Minnesota has got to understand about that team, though, if you want to look at hindsight, is that team went up against the Patriots and set a record for the most yards in a game. So that Eagles team, it was just a perfect storm, right? Look what they did against, arguably, everyone says, the greatest defensive mind in football history, and Bill Belichick.
I know, it just hurts so bad, dude, because they barely got past Atlanta.
But understand who they lost to. They lost to the eventual Super Bowl champions. You want to talk about being on a mission?
Oh, you're talking about
I'm talking about when the Vikings lost. I'm talking about when the Vikes lost to
San Francisco.
No, the Eagles in the NFC Championship game.
They won the Super Bowl against the Eagles or the Patriots.
I'm talking about the Vikings when we lost.
We lost to the eventual
Everybody
Super
likes
Bowl
to use
champions.
that as a game to say, "See, I told you." It's like,
Gotcha.
what? That same team went on to play the Patriots and set a record. Their offense looked like it couldn't be stopped, just like with ours. So they had something there. Something clicked. Jeffries was playing great. The thing drafted by the Bears, Alshon Jeffries, right, was playing great. Couldn't stop him. They had some things clicking, right, and it worked. And you have to look at the element of confidence, the amount of confidence Nick Foles is playing with. It's why he's in the league right now. He knows how he did it. You can't ever take that away from Nick Foles.
Let another comeback victory.
Yeah, exactly.
Against Tom Brady again.
You can't do it.
Is he 2-0 against Tom Brady in big games?
Yeah, I believe so, maybe, right? But going back to just analyzing the sport, you got to look at it how these players respond. So it comes down to you draft the right player because you believe you can communicate with this player. I can make him better, but how are you making a player better? You're getting them to believe in themselves, right? A coach is more than just somebody who has a scheme. He has a certain type of player. Like if we think about the culture of the Vikings, be patient. We don't just start rookies, all right? You got to earn it. There's a reason for that. Yeah. That's a discipline. That's a certain level of complacency that you can't have as a rookie. You just give it all to him up front. It's like giving a 15-year-old kid a mansion and saying, take care of this, okay? No, I mean, the likelihood of that is slim to none. So he understands, especially when you think about young kids who are underprivileged, who now come into a sum of money. You have to have you are investing money into this piece of your business, and it has to work. Right. If you don't think that, I mean, you look at Jimmy. Help me out here,
Jimmy
Dallas.
Garoppolo?
No, down in Dallas, their owner.
Oh, Jerry Jones.
Yeah, okay, you think of Jerry Jones. Like Jerry Jones had like an entourage of like security.
Did you know his nephew is the Alex Jones? Like the crazy one?
That's his nephew?
Yeah, they're related. I swear to God, dude, I'm not making it up. The owner of the Dallas Cowboys.
That's why he isn't alive. I mean, this is why Alex Jones
why he
is
hasn't
alive.
been murdered.
Because he's like
got a billionaire uncle.
So he gets the call like, hey, Alex, you need to calm down here. I just had to write another check, man. All right.
You just cost me.
I don't want to do this, but I love your dad. Okay, like
you just cost me $250 million.
Alex Jones got that like. It's like the amount. I think
They're turning the frogs gay.
I think Alex Jones.
He actually said that. They're turning the friggin' frogs gay.
He has to take. Even with the medication he takes for anxiety, it's not enough. The amount of pressure.
It's not medication. It's called cocaine.
Oh, okay.
He does so much.
Some people call that medication, for the record, right? But
that's a joke. You can't sue me, Alex. That is a joke.
It's a joke.
That is a joke.
It's a joke, man. Come on. You don't know what Alex Jones does, man.
Alex,
right?
You cannot sue me for liable because that is a joke.
It's a joke.
This is entertainment. It says so on the podcast.
I didn't believe him anyway. So, I mean, I couldn't prove nor deny. I'll say that. But Alex Jones, like just going into that whole thing. Great point, by the way. I didn't know that. I learned something new, and I'll never forget it.
Yeah,
right?
sorry. Now we have digressed.
Okay, we're back on it. So
Jerry Jones,
had an entourage of people that would be with Des Bryant.
Right.
So if we don't think that they look at character as a means of drafting a player, come on, right?
Right.
And there's so many elements to how a team works that you got to focus on one. You can't just use numbers and stats. So what I'm trying to talk about is how the Vikings can succeed, right? What I've noticed from Kirk Cousins is he, by definition, has an he's a system quarterback. He has an amazing arm, though. And one thing that's underrated is making the throws. So we got to use our own anecdotal experience as fans, right? Viking fans. We got to talk about Tavares Jackson and Kirk Cousins.
Throw under pressure.
Yeah, and honestly, he can. The problem is what pressure does before he throws the ball.
Exactly.
Right.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was trying to say.
So
if he's willing to make the throw, and he fuck man, but again. Maybe he knows he's prone to fumbling.
Well, let's stay here, though.
So he tucks the ball too quick.
It isn't because he plays a very conservative game if it's not perfect, if it's not there. He wants to look for those matchups, the one-on-one on his first read. And typically what he does is he pump fakes. Now, to anybody who questions the whole system quarterback, all you got to do is realize the amount of checkdowns. If we run a checkdown, it looks like a play that we run, not like a real checkdown where he's moving. Like running backs over there, just get over there and dump the ball off. That's not what you see in this offense. You don't see Kyle Rudolph.
Right.
What you see is a play being called for Kyle Rudolph in the end zone.
Right.
He'll be one-on-one here. Okay, we're going to go to him. As opposed to using everybody on the field. That's what I don't see Kurt doing. Not because he can't, but he cannot buy himself time. He can make all the throws, but he is horrible under pressure. And again, you have to use your experiences as a fan to really understand what you see every day, because the stats are going to be misleading. He holds on to the ball because he doesn't like to throw interceptions, right? So he doesn't. But typically when you see him throw the ball, right, it's like, so now if you look at his Washington highlights, which I did when we drafted him, he had a tendency to hike the ball and make the throw. Was the throw great? Was it on a rope? Yes, and that's not to be underestimated because he's a great thrower. When he's on, if his confidence is there, some of the prettiest deep balls I've seen him thrown just fall into a wide receiver's hands, right? That's what, when his alpha juice is at an all-time high, he can make throws. Incredible on a rope. But I don't even give him number one. I think when we had Sam Bradford, he was the quarterback that never was, right? If he could have stayed healthy, that was the guy who was line audibles, right? And as evident of this, where did he come from? Philadelphia.
Yep.
What did he do in Philadelphia?
Well, actually, you know what? He was actually drafted in St. Louis.
Yeah, no.
Pat Shurmur was the head coach.
He was, but now go back though to
and
Philadelphia,
then he went to Philly,
where who was there? Shurmur.
And guess who Philly traded to get him?
First round pick.
Straight up.
You mean Philly from Philly to
St. Louis.
St. Louis, who?
Nick Foles. Straight up.
So what did he do, though? So when we look at Sam Bradford, set a record for most completions in a season, or highest something, one of those two, right?
Here?
No, in Philadelphia. Go check the stats.
Well, here he set the NFL record
completion
for completion percentage.
Yeah, so my point, though, is like when you go back to that year, and Sam Bradford.
Breeze
and then,
the next year.
But either way, though, I think he owns 2 records in consecutive seasons. So he had some familiarity with this style of offense. So if we go back and really, really put it in perspective, Sam Bradford was that type of quarterback. You saw line checks. You saw him understand, I don't have a lot of time, so I have to know, I'm pretty sure he did his homework, the way that he understood the game. And he wasn't afraid to make throws under pressure. So he was my favorite. And again, now we go look at the stories, right? We go look at what he did in Arizona, right? Or the other teams that signed him. When you have something good, right, everybody seems to benefit from it, right? When you have a good offense, in some cases you can. In most cases, you can plug a quarterback in there, right? The Vikings have proven that. I think it took a Spurgeon win to realize that theory won't go past 4th string, right? But we can take Todd Bowman and throw him in this offense. We can take Gus Frerotte even. Matter of fact, we can take any backup and just throw him in there. And they're going to say, oh, that's Randy Moss right there. You know what I'm going to do? No Randy ratio. I'm just going to tell him to run. I'm going to throw him the ball. And I'm going to support this statistic by saying prior to the Steelers game that Dante Culpepper got injured, he was averaging under 10 yards a catch in the whole Randy ratio thing, right? That game, he went over 10 because he caught 2 bombs, right, in that game. I remember this.
From Gus Frerotte, I think.
From Gus Frerotte. And then, I think Todd Bowman. It was Bowman. Todd Bowman came in there and just started throwing lasers, right? Todd Bowman.
When Culpepper got injured?
So we had Todd Bowman, who if you go look at his stats, just trust me. There's a season where he's like 10 touchdowns, 1 interception. That was the Todd Bowman window as the starter. Then you look at Gus Frerotte, and he looks in. I think Randy Moss caught 3 touchdowns, 200 yards against San Francisco. I remember this game. He was killing the cover 2, just bomb, bomb, bomb. Then we go to Atlanta, and it's like Randy Moss all over again. The Randy Moss that was on NFL 2K, the commercial. Like, he was back to being a superstar.
Right.
Then Culpepper comes in and does his, I want to be the quarterback, so I'm going to throw the ball to everybody but you because you make it easier for me because Nate Burleson's one-on-one, Vasante Shanko, whatever. Byron Chamberlain. Or your man, who's the other tight end?
Oh, you're talking about the upside down bowl. Jermaine Wiggins.
Okay, when you go,
that's my guy.
How many times? The thing about Dante is he had one-on-one coverages everywhere.
Dude, Jermaine Wiggins was a man. Come on.
He was. Like, I used to go back and forth with Dave Fullerton.
Dude, his fat ass would jump over motherfuckers and hurdle him.
At one point,
he was built so big on top. He was. And so skinny on the bottom. He was like an upside-down bowling pin.
John Madden referred to him as a Charles Barkley type to box him out. Like, so Madden saw it too, right?
Yeah. He was trying to be nice.
I mean, the real Madden, not the game, right? Yeah. Watching a commentated game. But
that was back when Madden still did TV, huh?
Oh man, yeah, those
good old days.
Yeah, man. Just going back, to what it takes to be, a great quarterback. It takes, gall. It takes a certain level of just you're not afraid. And Kirk Cousins plays in a style, and he always has, where he's only looking to make the first read, and if it's not there, he tends to hold on to the ball. So what I saw from his lowlights were teams understood that and just started blitzing him like crazy. I mean, like all-out blitzes, and that's when the fumble started. If you watch his lowlights, you'll see like, hey, did we look at this? What's our general manager's name?
Rick Spielman.
Rick Spielman.
Yeah.
Okay, if you think about like what he should have been looking at, it should have been everything, because he came to Minnesota and did the same thing. And again, if we got to go back and talk about his success, last year was great because he had a full year with Dalvin Cook. I mean, he had Dalvin Cook came into his own last year. There were games where, 80 yards. Okay, all right, we'll take that. Right. We've been lucky to go from Adrian Peterson pretty fast to having another arguably top back in the league.
Sure.
Right. And as a result, teams they have to game plan. So when you go back to thinking about how greatness makes it easier, you have less matchups. There's, you can't key in, but I think teams realize, you know what? If they have to pass the ball, blitz them. Now, as evidence of this, if we go back to the Houston game, I think Houston had one of the worst defenses in the league. I think worse than ours. Matter of fact, if we look at the statistics, I think that they only accounted for 1 or 2 quarterback hurries the whole year. But then they play against Minnesota, and what do? He gets sacked 3 times. Right. So it's just telling you, like, if you put pressure on him and take away his first read, he tends to hold on to the ball. Now, it just so happens, do we give him credit or that rookie? Look, anybody who's watched that rookie, every time he's caught the ball, he's looked like something. And what I'll say this, like, who's the idiot we got? Treadwell, right? Mm-hmm. What I saw Treadwell do is catch a ball. I didn't see him, Percy Harvin style, get a ball and make plays. I'm like, show me why you're a first-round pick, man.
Dude, I was super high on Jefferson.
We all were. Oh, yeah, Jefferson. Yeah, we did our homework and looked. Him and Burrow, right? Both like, wow.
And that was the argument is like, is Burrow that good and he's making Jefferson look good, or is Jefferson that good and he's making Burrow look good? Because a lot of people had great seasons with Burrow that season. It wasn't just Jefferson. And I was like, dude, here's the thing is you were echoing in the back of my mind. So when I was doing it this year, like we do every year for fucking trying to be rubes and scout the NFL draft, it's fun, man. And when you nail a player that nobody else understands, it's one of the greatest feelings in the world. And with the Jefferson pick, I didn't think he would fall to us. And when he did, I was so happy when we drafted him, because what you have always talked about is, does he have playmaking ability? And one of the easiest ways to do that and see that is, what does he do after he has the ball? How does he run? And when I watched the tape on Jefferson from college, I even tried to look for low lights. And his low lights, it was like, he'll work that one out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. He'll figure that out. Yep. And dude, he's awesome, man.
He won one-on-one matchups on a consistent basis. And now in the NFL level, as a rookie, one of the hardest things to do to come into this league is come in and perform as a wide receiver immediately. And he went one-on-one with your boy Malcolm Butler from the Super Bowl champs, Super Bowl MVP for the Patriots. Yeah.
Yep. And did not look like a rookie. That's all I'll say.
And he didn't last week
175 yards. No, exactly.
So the question you got to ask yourself when you assess like Kurt, this is when we got to look at Spielman and say, well, he did give some talent to this guy, right? Is he making this receiver, or is this receiver that good? Well, he showed you, throw me the ball. And if you watch him, whenever he caught the ball, ironically, he made some type of wiggle.
Yeah.
Right? So what I see with Gary Kubiak is the inability to understand the game is faster.
Yep.
Right? So like when a good example is when Aaron Rodgers plays against Minnesota. Prior to this season, it was fast throws. Why define insanity? Why allow the Vikings with arguably one of the best, front four, from a standpoint of
outside of this season?
Yeah, outside of this. I said that. I already said that, right? But at the time when you had Everson Griffin, you had some other backup who was coming in getting pressure. You had Lindelof Joseph, who still commanded a double team, right? Two gap guy, but then you had the other All-Pro. Yeah. And they showed you that if you give them time, they're going to make you pay for it. So what do they do? The opposite. Everything was fast, chop, chop, chop.
Which was actually, ironically, playing right into Zimmer's playbook.
Bend but don't break.
Which is why we pointed out on our episode that didn't air, if you notice, the way to beat the Vikings is your quarterback's got to be tough as nails because he's got to be willing to take a hit, and you go deep. You throw the ball deep. And you have to have playmaking wide receivers that can go up and catch the ball in the air. And the Eagles did that to us in the NFC Championship game, and they went into that game saying, we know we cannot beat the Vikings if we try to play into their game, which is 3-step drops and dink the ball. They want you to think that's what you have to do. So we're going to do this. We're going to fucking do a lot of play action. We're going to drop back, and we're going to throw the ball deep. And it worked.
Well, you know what else they had,
that's
though,
what
too.
the Packers learned to do against us, and we saw that week one.
But the Eagles had something else, too, though, is they had a pretty good O-line. When I think when you look at Pro Football, a very credible site that does a ton of, Pro Football something.
Pro Football Reference? Is that what you're talking about?
I don't know.
Pro Football Focus?
Yeah, there we go. Pro Football Focus. When you look at how they rate their O-line, they had a couple of guys up there that were, they were one of the best overall O-lines. Like, when I think about Jason Peters,
he's
at left tackle, but I watched him, I'm like, you see what that left tackle's doing right there? So they knew coming into that game that, okay, you guys think you're going to blitz us? Well, we got two tackles that can deal with your guys, right? It was the perfect storm, because when you think about them,
actually, wasn't Jason Peters out for that game?
No. Well, you know what? I know
he was
is
out for that game, and we still got smoked.
Who knows? But what I do know is, when you go back,
he was back for that game.
When you go back and look, the realization is they had the talent, but against Atlanta, they could barely score a touchdown. Remember, Atlanta lost that game. They kept trying to force the ball Julio in the red zone, just horrible plays. So we matched up better against Atlanta, whereas they matched up better against us, right? And it just worked out that way. It didn't mean, but the questions you have to ask yourself as an organization is, how do I make it work, right? As fans, we want to blow it up, but truly, great organizations figure out a way to make it work, and that's why.
Yeah, and they just keep plotting.
Yeah, they keep finding ways. So, are we going to see improvement? Is the question. Are we going to see more people involved in the offense tomorrow? Are we going to see a balance of the run? Are we going to make sure that we are giving the ball to Dalvin Cook? Because we've proven that based on the type of O-lineman we drafted, we want to be runners. Because no one talks about that. We talk about how bad they are. They're not geared to be pass blockers. It just so happens we got a young athletic guy in Ryan. What's his name? Ryan O'Neal?
Yeah,
Brian O'Neal, who is incredible at doing what? At being a left tackle, a right tackle in so many aspects, right? The Vikings have had a ton of success running the ball, and we can't undermine that, right? Like, Dalvin Cook has blocked when they run, because you take a bunch of smaller O-linemen and put them out in space, they have this thing called force now, because they're big guys accelerating.
Right.
So if you look at the way they draft a lot of guys that don't have guts. You don't see a ton of weird, unproportionate tackles with the Vikings. You see more athletic tackles,
right?
Stout guys, right? Guys who would like pick up a big ass rock and throw it, like a stout big guy. Not
which
like
in theory, ironically, would signify traditionally that you would have great pass blockers and good run blocking in space. But the Vikings have a power running game.
Yeah, and they don't have a scheme they don't have a quarterback that is able to maneuver in the pocket.
Right.
Now, getting
like
out,
Aaron Rodgers.
Bingo. Or like anybody. Like if you watch
Kirk Cousins' footwork and body movement is much closer to Tom Brady than it is Aaron Rodgers.
I was going to say Christian Ponder, but
no, but I'm saying if you take those two quarterbacks.
Style, yeah.
So you got Tom Brady on one end of the spectrum, and you've got Aaron Rodgers, both passers.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm ruling out runners for the sake of this argument.
Yeah, exactly.
He's closer to this than he is to that.
Perfect
but
point.
But he doesn't have the O-line that Brady had.
Well, yeah, but the thing about Brady is when you watch him in the pocket, he has that weird poise. He understands how much time he has. You don't see a ton of strip sacks from a guy like Brady because he understands get rid of the ball. So what does he do? He checks down. Like, understand this to a point where Tom Brady's like, this is all I got here. Okay, boom. One mistake I made, I lost track of what down it was, and I went for yards as opposed to the first down because I thought it was, third down. But understand that I watched Tom Brady go to a check down because that was what was available with the amount of time, with the amount of pressure. Right? The check down can't be a design play. It's a check down. It means your options. Hopefully your second read isn't there, right? But that's when understanding the certain quarterbacks just have that rhythm that Kurt, let me read my lips, Viking fans, he'll never have it. He'll never have it. So you have options, and that is to A, decrease the amount of time that he holds onto the ball, right, and give him a check down if there's one read isn't there, or B, you got to draft personnel that now make us more of a team geared toward holding on to a pass or a ball to throw a pass.
Right. They need to sustain. Yeah, exactly.
So you can't have
you have to have exactly. Especially when you re-sign this fuck. Sorry. Damn. Sorry.
It's okay. Yeah. No, we're all kind of frustrated, right? But we're trying to be out,
if you're
rational,
going to extend the length of this man's Minnesota career, then we need to make sure that our O linemen are capable of sustaining pass blocks and specifically sustaining and maintaining a pocket, which usually isn't going to happen in a modern day NFL with 5 O-linemen. So you're immediately relegating yourself to keeping an extra tight end and possibly a second back in the backfield. So what are we going to start running, a 1985's I formation? Like, come on, we can't do that.
No.
So we have to adapt, meaning you can't build an offense around Kirk. So the only other direction then to go is full-on Brian Billick, 2000 Ravens, and you build the most prolific running game and defense that the game has seen in years.
Or what do we do?
You just hope that Kirk Cousins makes a lot of
but guess what, though? So
not bad decisions.
If you really look at it, or you get a quarterback who maybe doesn't have the strongest.
Like a Nate Stanley.
Look, we're not going down that road. That's that's a whole other topic, right? We'd have to analyze all the rookies, but let's just stick to the guys who are not on the practice field.
That'll
right?
be next Saturday.
Okay,
it can't be next Saturday. Podcast.
Or what you need to do is you need to take, you need to look at your system and say, if we want to do this, we need an athletic quarterback who can run. Okay. Because we need a quarterback who maybe the trade-off is he doesn't have an incredible arm, but he can buy himself some time, right? So if you're going to have a balanced attack, if you're going to have an offense that's you built an O-line that's geared toward athleticism, it's only logical that when they drop back for pass protection, they lose that battle.
Right.
They're not built to go back. They're built to move forward. That's why we run the ball so well. Anybody who says we don't, they're jokes. We do.
Right.
So they do run block well. But that's what you drafted them for. But you need to have a quarterback who complements that type of play, because having a guy expecting Kirk Cousins to be something he's not, which is a balanced quarterback who can move in the pocket. The worst thing for Viking fans is to see an empty backfield with him and shotgun. We know that's a problem.
100%.
We know it's a problem because if there is any pressure, he's not going to see it and he's not going to make the right read.
Yep. And making these adjustments to how they build the team, like the most elite teams in the league do this, not only player to player, quarterback to quarterback, coordinator to coordinator. They not only do it season to season, but the greatest coaches do it game to game. And that's what you see Bill Belichick do. You see a man with the same shortened COVID offseason as every other team in the league. You see them sign, granted, a very good quarterback, athletically speaking.
Yeah.
And actually a pretty smart cat. Maybe doesn't have the discipline and the maturity, but
maybe he does now, right? I don't know.
He is a smart guy. I heard him talking football, and I was like, this dude is way smarter than I thought he was. Number two, he is a superior athlete as long as he can stay healthy. With a shortened season, and they didn't even sign Cam until halfway through the summer.
Yeah.
So his ability to learn all these things. Okay, so the Patriots dealt with all the same shit we dealt with, plus more newness.
Plus an all-pro at linebacker who sat out, right?
And they completely revamped their game plan and offensive scheme
to be around
to fit what Cam Newton can do.
But now the issue though with the Vikings is you can't do that because you just don't have a quarterback that you can do that with.
But we watched him do. Hold on though, because we watched Bill Belichick do this with Garoppolo when Brady was suspended. But Garoppolo came out and went 2-0.
It looked great, yeah.
And then he got injured, and then Jacoby Brissett came in, and they basically ran a college offensive scheme.
Yeah, I remember that.
And they went 3-0, and
finally lost.
One game before Brady came back.
Yeah, but no, I'm agreeing to your point.
He did this dramatically week to week, whether he had a good quarterback or not. So is what bugs the shit out of me is like, here's another reference for anybody that still isn't convinced of this. This is why you don't start unless you are the smartest fantasy football player in the world. This is why you didn't start any New England running backs, because it was or even receivers, because it was too unpredictable. There was two guys you started, Gronk and Brady.
Yeah, and Brady.
That was it.
Yeah.
Unless you had a really good year, and then you'd start that defense too.
Even Josh Gordon wasn't a home run, right?
Nobody was a home run.
Now, who would have been? Who would have been? Brown. He would have been a home run.
Nobody was safe.
Brown would have caught over 100 balls in that system.
Probably.
Period.
But
like
he did play a game.
He came and caught in 5 catches, I think 60 yards, a touchdown.
Yep.
Right. He fit.
Yep.
But again, you know
you're
what?
Right, though. No,
talented guy. So in my opinion, like you didn't, because the Patriots were going to find different ways to beat you, keep you guessing. That's a whole different level of strategy that they're on. They're a step ahead of the game always, right? But the issue, I think, now when we get down to brass tags is the realization that you can't make Kirk Cousins into a guy who's all of a sudden aware in the pocket. Like, that's not going to happen.
Right.
So you don't have the personnel unless somehow they get better at pass blocking, but that's crazy. That's like malarkey, right? You can't, to even expect that is insanity, people. What you have is, again, as I said before, the Houston Texans had one of the worst defenses, and they still got to Kurt. They still got to him. Okay,
with 3 guys,
but they
rushed 3 men,
and that's happened consistently throughout the season, where there's been 4 on 5, and they got in. And if you just take a guy like Dak Prescott and throw him in Minnesota, it's a different ball game. Watch him under pressure. That's all you got to, like any of these guys. Russell Wilson. They don't have these cannon arms, but they have the ability to make the throws and extend plays.
Yep.
Unless you have that on your team, right? And
again, it's like you said with Kubiak, understanding how to utilize that personnel, because like you're seeing it in San Francisco, you're seeing it in Kansas City. Like, it's hard to rely on these other players in a fantasy. And I know it's weird to reference real world football in fantasy, but there are ways that it translates, and that's where you can see it. So, like, believe it or not, if you've got a winning team and you've got 1 or 2 reliable offensive players, that's actually a good sign in real life, because that means you've got a coordinator and a team who understand how to distribute the ball based on matchups and exploitation. Whereas when you've got a crap team, like say the Texans or the Cardinals, and you can start DeAndre Hopkins because he's that damn good. Yeah, well, he's also the only weapon. You know what I mean? And I picked those 2 teams because he's been on both, and he's shown that he can be that guy. Same thing. You look at a Keenan Allen. Like, it doesn't matter who his quarterback is. The rest of the team's such garbage that they got one consistent weapon. So as long as he stays healthy, he's gonna eat.
He's gonna
eat, and he's gonna give you something decent every single week. So that's, again, why I get frustrated, because when we finally, as Vikings fans, get a great coach on the other side of the ball. So for example, Dennis Green really was a great coach. Brought us to the playoffs, like I think 8 consecutive years before he finally won a playoff game, or maybe it was 8 consecutive total. I don't know what it was, but regardless, we finally, and his problem was he wasn't really a great defensive coordinator. So he gets Tony Dungy. He's part of the system. He promotes Tony Dungy. Tony Dungy goes to Tampa Bay. All of a sudden, we go into the Tice era. Tice, it didn't work out so well. But he did really well with what he had. But point being, then we get Childress. Childress, offensive guy just like Denny Green, brings in a guy by the name of Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin leaves, goes to Pittsburgh, wins the Super Bowl. Fast forward. Leslie Frazier era, much like the Tice era, not so great. Okay, nothing really great happened there. But then we get into this Zimmer era. Now we got a defensive guy. So now this shit is happening on the other side of the fucking fence. So we got Shermer goes. We finally get a good coordinator in Shermer. Boom, gone. Head coach, New York. Eventually loses his job. Got a bad deal. Maybe he should have stayed here. Maybe we'd have won a Super Bowl. Maybe maybe you match Shermer with Cousins in 2018.
Yeah, what did Shermer? Yeah, who knows? Who knows? But the difference with what we had with
Stefanski, just to wrap my stupid point up. Now we get a great one in Stefanski. Yeah. So we can't keep those offensive
But what you got to be able to
agree.
We can't, and that's a good problem as Viking fans. That's why I say you don't need to change the organization. We just don't have the personnel. Our offense isn't in sync right now, right? Because when it's time to pass the ball, when we have to pass the ball, let me rephrase that. When you have to pass the ball, that's when we struggle, right?
Or anytime there's an empty backfield and they know we're going to pass.
We know we're passing. So now when we get into thinking about Kirk Cousins, So when we get into thinking about Kirk Cousins, one of the elements that I look at is how many passes he's had batted down. So they talked about this stat his first year, and apparently there was a statistic out there that indicated that he got the ball batted down more than any other quarterback. So I thought about it and I said, well, I think they're on to his read. I mean, so when you're a D lineman, any type of movement that isn't going forward is going to slow you down. So to extend your arm means, you have a good idea of his how he's throwing the ball, where it's going.
Right.
So I thought about it and I'm like, okay, let's look at these Washington highlights. And what I saw was a guy make a read on one-on-one coverage, right? Like he was open. So when you got great coordinators, they're chess players. They look at defense as a series of moves and decisions to be made and do this. And most of his coordinators are head coaches and were great offensive minds. Then he goes to Minnesota, right? And who do we take? We take a guy who came out of a system that garnered toward the likes of who? A Carson Wentz, right? A guy who can buy himself some time and make the extra reads, right? And the issue is, was it really Stefanski? No, it was not the right personnel. You didn't have a pass blocking O-line. You don't have Jason Peters. You don't have time to execute this play. You don't have a quarterback that has the mind to. So now you take a guy like Sam Bradford in that same system, and he breaks records, right, for being able to complete a pass, meaning he's reading defenses. But when it looks like we can't even get sustain a drive, and it happens consistently with Kirk Cousins, he doesn't have the ability to extend plays unless the play calls for him to get outside of the pocket. That's not improving. That's like the design of the play.
Because he is semi-athletic. He can run a little bit.
I watched him run. He doesn't look like Tom Brady running the ball.
And that's what bugs the shit out of me, dude, is because like we seen this back in the day under who was it? Lovie Smith in Chicago with Kyle Orton. They completely changed their offense based on what Kyle Orton could do. It was a lot of 3-step drops, and they relied on their defense to get stops. And you know what? That's just what's bugging me. It's like we get these guys like Filippo and Kubiak who don't understand how to utilize our talent, and even Turner. There were some issues going on back then, which I still disagree with. I think we should have tried to keep Turner because that was the perfect guy. It's an offensive coordinator who has zero desire to be a head coach ever again. Yeah. Those are so rare that if you can get one, hang on to him for dear life. Let him do whatever he wants to do on that side of the ball because he's a proven guy.
Well, yeah, but he's proven
every single team he's been.
But I see when we get into Norv Turner, he made his name out in Dallas, and you look at that offense, right? And you think, okay, yeah, 5 or 6 Hall of Famers, right? Now we got to give him some credit for that because he was a part of that. That's how you get paid. But now we look at his body of work, and
losses as a head coach, he was terrible.
Yeah, so
all his offenses were amazing.
But even as an offensive coordinator, Does he see the game differently? Either way, you have to have the personnel for a guy to execute his game plan. And DiFilippo, I don't think he was a bad coordinator. I think that he didn't get the type of quarterback that he thought he was getting in order to execute it, right? You need to buy time with this type of O-line we have. You need a guy that can move in the pocket. And if you don't have that, you're going to continue to see what we see. And for Vikings fans to expect anything less, again, I'm going to say it's insanity. Kirk Cousins is reliant upon the play that's called. He's not going to typically on a consistent basis extend the play. Don't bring up the Packers game because the year that we tied them, they had a horrible defense that year, right? Chicago was the team, in the NFC North. But, just going.
We got swept.
Yeah, we got swept.
2 years in a row.
2 years in a row, right? And so
it's looking like it might be 2 years in a row for the Pack now too.
Yeah,
shit. It is. And I do not think we're beating a Foles-led Foles-led Bears team either. So I think we're gonna get, dude. And this is what scares the shit out of me is like the Vikings have a perfect storm to have a disaster of a season. So 2 outcomes, because I know we got to start wrapping this up. We've been going almost 2 hours.
Oh, we're good. Yeah.
So there's a couple more things I want to cover with you before we leave. There's 2 ways this season ends that I'm terrified of. Option 1, the Vikings do exactly what we just discussed. They get swept by the Pack. They get swept by the Bears again. 3 years in a row will be the Bears. And we split at best. We split with the Lions. We have a horrible season. And the Wilfs say enough is enough. They fire Spielman. They bring in a new GM. The new GM fires Zimmer because he wants to bring in his guy, right? You know how it goes. And we start from scratch all over again because I do think these guys are on to something. Second fear is, and this is what I think, and this is where I want to segue, is to predictions. I don't even have the faith that the Vikings will fuck this season up properly.
Well, you know what though,
and get a great draft pick or go grab Trevor Lawrence, any of it.
Well, let's talk about this though.
They will manage to salvage this season just enough to finish 7-9. Everyone keeps their jobs.
Yeah.
Built-in excuse, COVID season, blah 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 blah, and we get the 16th pick in the draft.
But let's do this
once again.
Let's do this though, right? We've seen more quarterbacks come out of late rounds, so. First, let's go back to the Packers, right? They get a Hall of Fame quarterback in Brett Favre. They keep him. If you go look at their draft in chronological order for, we'll say 2004, right? Or 2005, I think, when Aaron Rodgers was a rookie, right? I think they drafted 4 or 5 quarterbacks, and I'm gonna say most notably they took a quarterback in the 2nd round and in the 4th or 5th round. I think.
Yeah, we looked at this. Yeah.
So if that's the case. Even an organization that feels they have a franchise guy, you have to be thinking about, is this a talent we can pass up on? Because what happens? Quarterbacks get injured, right?
Yeah.
And so think about New England. Let's talk about how they evolve, right? They evolved when they understood Tom Brady is not.
Jarrett Stidham's a fucking 2nd or 3rd round pick.
Let's do this though. So Tom Brady gets injured. Right,
yep.
Against I think maybe the Jets of knee, right?
Yep.
They bring in Matt Castle, right? The first couple of games is like, oh, their season's over. No, they go 11-5. Matt Castle sets some records and ends up getting paid by Kansas City because of what he was able to do in that style of offense. They found a way to make it work for him. And Matt Castle was a sneaky runner. He ran the ball, but right. he had a game where he threw the ball. Look at his stats; you'll be surprised, right? What he was able to do. But he got paid, right? And so it just shows you the Patriots are a system built to say, hey, we got somebody to replace you. We just do. And what did they do? Even with Tom Brady, a Hall of Famer, they went out there and they got Garoppolo. And I don't know if people know this, but Bill Belichick did not want to give up Garoppolo. He wanted to pull the plug on Brady. Because if you saw the highlight reel, like Garoppolo looked like the next best thing in New England when he got those 2 starts. Yep. It looked great, throwing the ball. He understood the offense. So
and we now know that it's not speculation. Belichick wanted to keep Garoppolo and trade Brady or just let Brady go.
Let him go.
And Kraft put the kibosh on that and said, no, Brady's the guy till he dies.
Till he dies, yeah.
And then Brady ended up leaving anyway.
He ended up leaving anyway because they had to finally understand that the show has to continue, right? Like, your head coach, it doesn't, to some extent, you see an old-ass man as a head coach, but a quarterback, this is unprecedented what Brady's doing at his age, right? Still trying to be elite.
It's crazy because Brady chose to leave.
Well, no, they weren't going to re-sign him.
No, I just watched it. They wanted to re-sign him. And in fact, technically, it wasn't even a money problem. Brady wanted
I think
to
he
leave.
felt disrespected, though.
I think is what it is. I think it's completely ego-driven.
Yeah.
And he does not, it does not sit well with him that Peyton Manning is still arguably better because he went and won 2 Super Bowls with 2 different teams.
I don't know that anybody would argue that at this point, man. I think people understand what
Tom Brady wants to put
Does he want to do it by himself? Of course he does.
There's still people that say Tom Brady is a system quarterback, and he without Belichick, he's trash. And there's people that say it the other way. And that's why this season for these two, it's so
those
intriguing.
Statements warrant some real tangible reasons. I mean, I can tell you that before Tom Brady had a 1,000-yard receiver, he was still putting up pretty good numbers as a starting quarterback. Finally, when they gave him some talent, we saw what he could do.
Well, and we just redefined, for anybody to tie this back to what we were talking earlier, so this doesn't sound like we're digressing. No, we just kind of defined earlier what a system quarterback is. They're not walking up to the line. They're not barking out orders. They drop back. They make one read. They throw. That's not Tom Brady. Tom Brady's not a system quarterback. He was 3-1 going into last night or the night before. Stop it. He, again, like you mentioned, he made one mistake in thinking that he had an extra down, which happens all the time. It happens to great quarterbacks on a regular basis.
He gets a pass. Tom Brady gets a pass.
Yeah,
it's that simple.
He's got
Tom
them.
Brady.
He still got them to 3-1, and he just threw 6 touchdown passes.
5 touchdowns, right?
The week before. Like, get off his ass. The guy is 40-something years old and proving he's still the man. And Belichick, you want to say, oh, he's a cheater. He's not. No. Look what he did. That team looks extremely competitive. We just laid out all the reasons. Stop it.
And you know what it took? You know what it took for them? It took COVID for them to knock out Cam Newton. Okay, what do we do now? We got 2 days to prepare, or whatever it was, right? To put a new guy in there.
Yep.
So,
and who'd they roll with? Brian Hoyer?
Yeah, Brian Hoyer and the other guy, Driscoll or whatever it was, right?
Driscoll?
Both guys played.
Or is it?
I could say.
I thought it was Stidham.
Stidham. It's Stidham and Hoyer. They both played, right? The last game. But, what makes a guy evolve beyond a system quarterback is his ability to read defenses and understand how to execute his offense and take chances. So part of Kirk Cousins' profile is he tends to not throw the ball, under a ton of pressure. He'd rather take the sack or try to throw the ball away. But in most cases, he's unaware of the pressure coming and doesn't do a lot to improvise to really stop an outside rush.
Right.
So the biggest issue with Kirk Cousins is his inability to extend plays, as I've said earlier, but that's never going to get any better because he can make a great throw, but how he responds to pressure in a game, that's just who he is.
Right.
And if you want that to get better, what is he going to take to go to some clinic in the offseason and work on lateral? That's about guts. It's about no fear, just understanding how to stay in sync with your offense. Now, we could attribute some of this to the lack of consistent coordinator for all the right reasons. Your guys keep getting promoted and to head coaches, but a lot of teams have had new personnel coming into the season. Right. Talk to the Bengals about that. They have a rookie back there.
See, and that's what I was getting at earlier, and that's a great point you brought up. I'm glad you said that because that'll be a great way to kind of put a bow on this and segue into the other thing, which is that's why I still have some beef with Zimmer, because a guy like Belichick, yes, you could say he never won a Super Bowl.
Belichick's the GM. He's the GM also of the Patriots. So he gets
and
the
people
draft.
are like, oh yeah. but all those years in Brady's prime, they never won a Super Bowl. Well, that's true because they didn't have McDaniels. That's true. But you know what they did do? They still made it to 2, and they still dominated their division year in and year out.
They made it.
So fucking, again, stop it. You're just trying to find something wrong with that.
Yeah, that's one of those dumb stats that people, Look. You just said he went to 2 Super Bowls.
Every year they were the pick coming out of the AFC.
Every year
they won the division every single season, and they were everyone's pick to go to the Super Bowl in the AFC.
100, man.
Every single person. You had to bet money, and then of course you had some guy who's like trying to be smart and
there was just a change in power.
Like,
you know?
oh, we're gonna pick the and you know. They weren't wrong because again the Patriots only went to 2, but still.
Wait, go back here. Hold on. Could it have been Jim Fox who?
John Fox.
I said it again. John Fox, who beat the Patriots as the Broncos coach. I think Jake Plummer.
I think that was Spagnuolo.
Spagnuolo?
I think it was Steve Spagnuolo.
No, I think you're talking about Miami is where he came from.
That's where he ended up.
No, because you had Spagnuolo didn't coach the Broncos. It was if we go back.
No, hold on. Let me just look it up because I'm pretty sure Steve Spagnuolo was the defensive coordinator that beat the. I think he beat the.
Who was the head coach of the Broncos? Was it Josh? Was it him?
Josh McDaniels.
Because Jake Plummer was their quarterback, right? And I want to say it was the other guy. It was
Jay Cutler was their quarterback.
No, Jay Cutler had a run. No, the years that like the Broncos were kind of be a playoff team. Plummer was their quarterback.
Okay. Hold on. Steve Spagnuolo, I'm pretty sure, was the defensive coordinator that beat the undefeated Patriots.
Yeah, for the Giants?
Yep. And then I got it right here. Career history. Here it is right here. 2007, defensive coordinator for the Giants. And then he went to the Rams. That's what I was trying to say. And he did eventually end up in Miami. I think you're right. No, he didn't. You're thinking of Tony Sperano, dude.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's a different guy. That's an offensive line coach. Steve Spagnuolo. And then I think he ended up back with the Patriots or back with the Giants in. Yeah, he did. He ended up back with the Giants in 2015. And then Josh McDaniels.
So let's do this though, right? Let's realize that like another thing people don't talk about
went to Denver.
So, but let's go back to the years that break. Right, Denver had a strong resurgence. First, they had
Josh McDaniels.
But then he left and whatnot. But
because they didn't like. He wanted to do things his way, the Patriot way, and they didn't like that. And it's like, but he won a playoff game with Tim fucking Tebow. He got rid of Jay Cutler and won a playoff game.
Yeah, so I'm almost positive though that I think somewhere you got to throw Jake Plummer's years in Denver. They were some successful years.
Yeah, but that wasn't this year. That was
no. I'm talking about Jake Plummer. Jake Plummer led Broncos team beat the Patriots, right? So. And we're talking about a decade where you said they didn't go to the Super Bowl. So now we got to throw in, or didn't win a Super Bowl. Well, in that window of time, we got to remember that the Broncos had a new resurgence with Peyton Manning, where he put together a team and he set records every year. Mm-hmm. I mean, the first 2 years out of the 3, right? Right. 1 year it was the touchdowns and yards. The second year, I think he led the league.
4 years? 3?
3 years, and then the third year, I think the injury.
Gotcha.
Right. But that was the year they won the Super Bowl, right? So you had to deal with the Broncos who went to 2 Super Bowls, lost 1, right, and won 1. So there were a lot of good teams, but just to be competitive, it just shows you that in order for the Vikings to salvage their season, it's actually a good thing that the Vikings can find a way to succeed and not be as horrible, because the concept of the draft to me is the one. Let me make this point here, like. You succeed because of your ability to develop players you have, right?
True. Yes.
And the hard part to accept is the hype that happens when you draft a player. You have generational players. Like for the first time in my life, I was able to look at a quarterback in Burrow, right, and say, I went into a scouting session looking at the wide receiver we drafted, but I kept watching this quarterback by himself. I'm like. I kept watching like, oh, hold on, that was actually a great play right there. And pretty soon, even though I'm watching Justin Jefferson highlights, I'm looking at this quarterback. That was when I knew. And so I see him doing the same things, right, in Cincinnati, right? That ability just to move. It requires athleticism.
Right. Okay.
Right. So you got to develop talent because you can win with a quarterback in the second and third round. You can win if you draft the right guys that work for what you're trying to do. So look, in a perfect world, if Dalvin Cook is healthy 100%, right, and plays all 16 games, you can be successful in this offense. You just can't get down early. You have to move the ball. So Kurt cannot go out there and have 3 and outs. That's one of the biggest problems.
Right. Okay. But so is what I'm trying to say, though, is that's why I'm having a problem with Mike Zimmer, is because unlike Bill Belichick and some of these other coaches, right, like an Urban Meyer or a fucking Nick Saban, right, which Nick Saban actually came from the Belichick coaching tree in Cleveland. But regardless, these guys are also losing coordinators every year because they're so goddamn successful. But they don't have this up and down thing. That Mike Zimmer has this tendency to where he makes the playoffs, then misses the playoffs.
You know what,
makes
though?
the playoffs, then misses the playoffs. And the reason for that is because he doesn't have enough ability to coach the offensive side of the football and keep the system in place.
Well, yeah, but look, that concept is maybe consistent across the board, but in this case, they're very unique situations. I mean, for one, you have to effectively identify why your team is not succeeding. And if people are making pie graphs and saying that, well, it's because of Zimmer, and the guy drafted, he's got to take some blame for it too.
See this.
Hold on, let me do this here. Like, I'm saying this because to truly assess whose fault we got to look at why aren't they succeeding. So what happens on the field? And what we typically see is an offense that does not move the ball for a certain period. We'll say a half, right? We'll say a half they don't move the ball. You're like, what's going on? What is this? Right? But then what happens the next week, right, against the Titans? They make adjustments. They figure out a way to get Kurt involved. But now the problem is we still aren't committing to the run like we should be. But we are. So I think Dalvin Cook rushed the ball for 24 times maybe against Tennessee. We committed to the run. We were in the game. So how the Vikings succeed is playing to their strengths and imposing their will to allow those strengths to succeed. So you have to have a drive where you sustain, just the offense sustains a drive. You get first downs. It's not going to work any other way because if you want Kurt to beat you, he's really shown that he can't do it. But if the read is there, he can get it to a receiver. Right? If Thielen is there, he can do that, right? If he does a plan.
Let's get off the Kirk Cousins things because we beat that horse to death. I know,
but again,
we beat this horse.
I think
to
you
death,
did, but I want to just stress the fact of what I think we have to do moving forward, right? Not so much as beating Kirk Cousins.
This guy to call me for 4 fucking days. He calls me during a live podcast.
Right on,
fucker.
But look, not to harp on Kirk, but what I'm saying is the reason you're not winning is because, for one, we have some issues on defense, which they've shown. What have we done? We went out there and we signed a couple of guys. You got Hardy Nickerson Jr., apparently. Is that his name? Playing. Right, linebacker. He's a Cincinnati guy. Right? You've seen some changes out there, and I think you'll start to see some of the rookies that we drafted. They still have to earn it. That's the way we do it in Minnesota.
Just doesn't throw you on the field.
No.
You have to earn it.
So,
regardless.
you'll see the Vikings get better because they do develop talent, right? They do. We got 2 young cornerbacks. That's going to take some time.
Dantzler's the man.
Yes.
I got to tell you, I was hyped on that one.
So the question I'm saying is, if we're going to analyze the Vikings the way we should, what I'm saying is not that Kurt is a bad quarterback, but how you make it work with him. You make it work by making sure the run game is there, but you don't have the personnel to have these long drawn-out passes. And what normally happens when we do pass the ball, right? We'll talk about some of the games. They're in prevent, right? You're not pressuring. They're just bend but don't break, right?
Yep.
So we don't want to see that. What we want to see is when it's time to break this defense, can Kurt do it on a consistent – can we be competitive?
And the easiest way you can do that is, okay, so he's a one-read quarterback. Okay, so build in an automatic second read that he doesn't have to think about. Okay, so your play is designed to get this guy open. Mm-hmm. How do you do that? Well, you're going to get all these other things, moving parts to clear out this field and get this guy open. If he's not open, by design, instead of pumping it and getting sacked, that there's a check down, there's going to be a running back in this other cleared out zone because when you do all this shit, you create open space. It's that simple. So again, so for the listeners, because I'm sure people are getting sick of us here and beating the shit out of this
No, they're not. It's therapy.
It's Kubiak, and the reason it's a problem is because as long as you run the football enough,
well, then
Zimmer's
maybe
happy.
it's the newness of his offense, though, as we talked about before.
But that's not
it is. But again, now they're putting up points. Now they are scoring, right? When you think about it, but
it's one of the worst defenses in the league.
But it comes down to, as I said before, how can you highlight the strong points? Well, the easiest solution is look at all the teams who run the ball, right? What type of quarterback do they have, right? You have quarterbacks that aren't statues in the pocket. You know, you have, you know, if you think about even Tannehill's very athletic quarterback. We got to see that, right? We got to see him at least keep the game in front of him, right? By buying himself some time. You can go down the list of these guys who run the ball heavy and see that they have guys who move in the pocket. You don't really see this combination, right? Your Tom Brady types of quarterbacks, they're almost a dying breed when you think about it. Matt Ryan has a fast release and reads defenses. The ball is distributed. Matt Ryan he'll keep a drive alive, right? Achilles has always been their defense, but for the most part, you know, the Vikings can't find themselves in a situation to where they're down. That means that first possession has to be important. And since we've lost, you know, that ability for a quarterback to go out there and sustain a drive, which, to your point, what did we have with Stefanski? We saw a pretty good offense last year. We saw some games where Kirk Cousins looked great, right?
Yeah.
And we can all account to that, right? And that shows you whatever Cleveland did, they did it right.
And he went toe-to-toe with a Hall of Famer
with Drew Brees
in the fucking playoffs.
So
won.
That is why I say he's a system quarterback, because if you think about the coordinator who put together that plan for him, found a way to allow him to shine. So can he succeed? Yes, but it has to be under the right circumstances. It has to be with the threat to run the ball. Right, it just has to, because now in play action, when you watch Kurt, what does he do? See one-on-one coverages, whatever's there, he makes it. But typically, he's looking to drop back and make his first read. You don't see him do anything beyond that. But in play action, Kirk Cousins does a great job, as most quarterbacks should.
And he actually is one of the best play action.
But he should be, because it's really more of a testament to like the running back that they have to, stop.
True.
Right. So yeah, when Dalvin Cook's back there, home run hitter, I'm not exaggerating. That's what the kid can do. He's a problem. So the Vikings just, again, what's going to make us a great team is not by tanking. It's by, can we develop the talent? Can we see we're not going to see a young defensive end come in and have 18 sacks because he started every game. You're going to work for it. And that's what we see with Zimmer. He's going to work. He has a culture. And right now we just have we're in a stretch where we just keep losing coordinators for all the right reasons. We have to be patient. We got to have something long enough. We've talked about this before. Successful organizations are successful because they don't fire their head coaches.
I got one more question for you before we wrap this up, and it's to tie up all of this shit. When the Vikings lose a coordinator, why was last year the first year we promoted from within, and why don't we do that more? So last year, Clint Kubiak was the quarterback's coach under Stefanski. When Stefanski gets the head coaching job, why do we bring Gary down from the thing instead of leaving Gary where he was and elevating him? Why? Because that's the natural instinct, is that, okay, if you're having all this turnover, then you build a culture and a system.
But we got to really look at that to
not only groom players but to groom coaches.
But that's such a good problem to have. That says you're a successful team.
So why don't you understand?
Because who would have thought that, like, literally in 3 years, one coordinator would step down and the other ones would literally be head coaches?
Okay, but now I'm saying pivot. So, okay, you lose Stefanski immediately. Right at that moment, I'm going, okay, please don't pick fucking Gary Kubiak.
Well, yeah, but like
promote Clint.
But if clearly, and if this is the case, was Clint ready, right? I mean, understand, it sounds great. He's been around the league, but it's just like with Stefanski, right? That was his first year. He had been basically a lifer as a quarterback's coach in this whole era.
That's exactly it.
It worked.
He's never been a head coach.
But eventually, when you have that problem, I mean, think about the Patriots, right? They didn't just you lose McDaniels, right? He's been there. When you look at all these teams with these offenses,
they convinced him to stay.
But regardless,
he left once and came back. And
but now he's been there for like 8-9 years straight. Okay, you look at Bieniemy, right, in Kansas City. He's there still. The Vikings have a good problem because they're a successful organization, and finally it's kind of caught. The perfect storm took place, but this has also happened. Now, real Viking fans, go back in time. What happened the year that we had a pretty good team? right? Teddy Bridgewater injured. This was the year he was going to throw the ball, open the playbook up. So we go out there and we trade a first-round pick and we get Sam Bradford, right? AP gets injured. We finished that season 500 because we didn't stop fighting. That's what a winning organization does.
We started 0-5, I think.
No, we started 5-0 that year.
Oh, that's right.
And then lost to
Carolina.
Cutler. I think it was Cutler. We lost to Jay Cutler's Chicago game. Pissed me off, right?
No, it was Carolina.
Well, we lost to Cutler. We lost to the Bears at 1.2. It could have been Carolina. Sure. No,
they're the
13-3. The third loss we had was Carolina. That was the game you're talking about, where Jonathan Stewart broke up like a 180-yard run, first time throughout the entire season, right? But again, when you think about why we shouldn't necessarily blow it up, we've had a great track record, and all of a sudden blow it up. That's just a neurotic fan. That's the emotion of it. We just want to succeed.
Yeah, maybe
we're Viking fans.
I think it was Philly that beat us, that stopped that 5-0 streak that year, and then it just collapsed this season. But
we lost to Philly that year, but even so, we go through we look back at those years. And we realized that, like, we came within Adam Thielen fumble of beating the Dallas Cowboys that year, right? Who were having a great year as Dak Prescott's rookie season, right? We finished. We had a record number of offensive line combinations. It wasn't just one; it was many O-linemen.
Yep,
right.
That's a good point.
But we found a way to battle back. And that, to me, the resiliency is every so often the perfect storm is going to come. It took a COVID thing to take our D tackle out. All of a sudden, apparently, our all pro had some type of neck injury, right? That herniated disc. I mean, look what you just lost. That you had a lot of stake invested in those two players to run your defense. Because what does Zimmer like to do? I can tell you what he doesn't like to do, which is blitz. He doesn't like to blitz. He likes to have a front four that are dominant at creating pressure. That's the whole concept of the cover two. Now the question is, can he adjust with the personnel he has? You're going to have to blitz more, Zimmer. You're not going to have the same pass rush. You got to blitz. And so what did we see last week? We saw our middle linebacker blitzing on second down. It's there. The adjustments are happening, but we got a bunch of young players now. We got two young cornerbacks, right? Our free safety, what's his name, gets injured. I mean, he gets kicked out of the game for.
We win that game if he's. I mean, we won the game.
Yeah, we won the game, but it was closer because of that. You put some other guy who clearly, and I'm sorry for Harrison Smith. I said you overrated. I see when you're not in the game what happens. I underestimated your value out there, and I'm sorry, buddy. Right, but
don't worry, Anwar. If you wouldn't have said anything, he wouldn't have known because that podcast never aired.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So.
But dude, let's do this. Let's wrap it up. We've been going over 2 hours now, 2.5 hours. Yep. Let's do this. Let's do a rapid fire. Let's just try to run down the line and do some predictions for tomorrow's games. I'm just gonna go in order that they say here. Jaguars, Texans. Who you got?
The Jaguars, Texans. This is an emotional game. I think that the momentum to get their head coach out. I'm gonna have to go with the Texans.
All right, Ravens. I'm going to go Jaguars just because I think Gardner Minshew's a fucking beast.
And you got him on one of your fantasy teams. You're biased. Let's go.
That's true. Bengals, Ravens.
I'm actually excited for this game. I like watching Burrows play, but I think the Ravens still too strong on offense.
Me too. I agree. I think the Ravens defense is going to shut down a rookie quarterback. I just don't buy. I don't care how good you are. I'll never bet on a rookie quarterback. Panthers, Falcons.
Panthers, Falcons. We're gonna have to go Falcons at home.
I'm gonna go Panthers because the Falcons seem like they're diseased. Dan Quinn's gonna lose his job and they can't win a game to save their fucking life.
But they can put up points though, and the question is, can the Panthers do it? They can throw the ball.
Yeah, true. Good point. Raiders, Chiefs. I'm going obviously Chiefs.
This is, to me, I think are the Raiders for real? That's a big question. They won some games this year. They look pretty competitive. Do they have an identity? I think they do.
That could be the sleeper game of the week.
I think that, they have a Hall of Fame head coach who's going to try to get his guys up to ready to play. They had a tough loss last week, but I think that it'll be a fun game. Like, I want to watch that game.
How it's reading this, the home team's on the bottom, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Cardinals at Jets. I'm still taking Cardinals. Jets are diseased.
The Jets are just, you want to talk, that's like chicken pie. I mean, that's like the Black Plague. Yes, the Jets.
It's just a diseased organization.
They're a team who, what's their identity? Le'Veon Bell's coming back. Oh, great. Hey, good job, Le'Veon. You stood out for a year and have been the same back since.
Just diseased, man. They're the worst organization.
But man, it's not you.
Them in Washington. Eagles Steelers. That's going to be an interesting game, but I got to take the Steelers.
Eagles lost last week, right? Deshaun Jackson injured. Who do they throw the ball to? I got to go Pittsburgh.
Yep. Rams at Washington. Ooh.
Washington is without the number 1 overall pick or number 2.
Rams.
Yeah, look, this one, they're going through some quarterback issues, right? I think they've demoted their Haskins to 3rd string because I've heard, quote unquote, he is very immature at handling his power as a quarterback.
Yep.
So, man, I'm going to have to go with Rams. They still seem to understand how to play football.
Dolphins, Niners.
Niners lost that game last week, right? Miami, I still don't know what type of team they are. You want to run the ball. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Right now, 49ers at home.
Fitzmagic's hard to doubt, but I got to go Niners at home.
That'd be an interesting guy if you would have taken him and put him in place of Case Keenum.
Yeah, dude. I feel you.
Another guy, right? That he's not afraid.
Right?
Not afraid to step in the pocket.
He's a gamer, man. And I love the beard.
And I like the beard
in Minnesota.
I love the attitude, man.
Yeah.
I just like his he's
a boss, dude. He's a boss.
Big Lebowski type attitude, man.
Yeah, he's the man, dude. You fucking had a perfect Wonderlic score.
Yeah, he's a Harvard. He's a Stanford or Harvard guy,
right?
Got
like one of the highest IQs ever. Giants at Cowboys. I'm taking Cowboys. Giants are diseased.
I'm upset with the Giants for getting rid of Shermer. I don't think he's had an opportunity to really thrive with a full healthy team.
Right.
I.e. Barkley, for all you fantasy guys who made the decision to draft him, I know hasn't been fortunate for him, but I'm gonna have to go Cowboys.
Well, same thing. I don't bet on rookie quarterbacks. I also don't bet on rookie head coaches with zero fucking experience.
Zero experience.
Fuck that guy. What's his name?
I don't know his name. He came from the Panthers?
Patriots.
He
was like a quality control coach or something.
Whatever.
He wasn't even their offensive coordinator.
Well, good job, because Shermer was on to something. I liked his picks. I liked how he had the young quarterback ready to play.
Yep.
Colts, Browns. Baker, again, we can look at our Stefanski guy. He's out there dominating on the run, right? They lose, what's his name, to leg injury, I think, and Chubb. Who do they have?
Yep, he's going to be out 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's right, IR for you fantasy guys. But guess what? They have a guy by the name of Kareem Hunt who at once upon a time led the league as a rusher his rookie season and could have done the same the next year, but he got injured.
Well, and he got arrested.
He didn't get injured. He
DWI or something.
No, he punched some. Yeah, remember the whole domestic
thing? Chick.
Yeah,
in the face.
I think he's learned his lesson now. You're back in the league.
Or did he punch her in the pussy? Sorry,
I thought it was kick her in the pussy. Well, no, it was.
No, that's Dave Chappelle.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're right.
Trump's grab her by the pussy.
That's right.
I just blended the two. So.
I think that
and blamed it on Kareem Hunt. He punched her in the pussy.
That's right. But
that makes for a pretty funny visual.
But going back to just what the Browns are doing out there, it's a prime example of what we saw Stefanski do in Minnesota. He's playing to their strong points.
Yep.
Odell Beckham Jr. had 3 touchdowns.
Staying away from Baker's weaknesses.
Yeah, really.
Brilliant.
Because rumor has it that he's a one-read quarterback. That's what I've been hearing, right? But we'll see, right?
Taking Browns?
Yeah, I'm going Browns.
I'm actually going to go Colts.
Wait, hold on. I like the Colts defense. Yeah. Is pretty impressive, man.
And they know how to run the football, and Frank Wright's a really good coach. They got Rivers, so
I'll tell you what, the Browns have upgraded. This will be a fun game to watch.
It will be a fun game, and I'm going Colts. I think the Browns are the hot team that everyone wants to pick. They're 3-1 for the first time in forever.
Yeah.
But I'm going Colts based on experience in literally every facet of that game.
I do want to add I want to caveat to that. The year that
we're going to skip that one and go down to that one first.
The year that the Vikings drafted Cook, he was number 1 in college football at yards after contact. There was another guy that was number 2, and that was Kareem Hunt. They didn't lose anything by Chubb. All they did is allow Kareem Hunt to do what he's been doing since he's been, which is run the goddamn football. So it'll be a great game to see both teams can run the ball. I think the defensive edge goes to the Colts, but honestly, if the Browns run the ball the way they are, it's going to be I'm going to go Browns on this one.
And I respect that. The only reason I'm going Colts is experience. So I think when the game, because I think it's going to be a tight game, and I think when pressure's on the line, I think Reich's experience, because he's second or third year in that spot.
Phillip Rivers obviously is a gamer.
And Phillip Rivers, and that's what I'm betting on.
I would have paid Phillip Rivers $87 million to be in guarantees to be a Minnesota quarterback.
Right. Instead of I agree. Yeah. I fucking agree. We'll skip that one for now. And so Broncos Patriots. This one's pretty obvious, Patch, right?
Man, this is really tough here because Cam Newton's still out. But here's the thing, as we talked about, let's add on to the concept that with the Patriots. What can they do? They can develop talent, get guys ready to play. So with a week's practice, right, 2 weeks of knowing Cam Newton's not there, will they get him ready to play? If you think so, Patriots, so. Right?
Yep. All right, so
Broncos are suffering too with injuries.
So we're going to end with the Vikings Seahawks. Vikings have never beaten the Seahawks with Russell Wilson. Nope. Number one.
Teddy Bridgewater couldn't do it, and we had Blair Finkel perpetuate the curse that we think exists in Minnesota. Yep. Right?
And we're on the road.
And we just have some of the most disgusting, sloppy games ever for me to watch as a Viking fan against Seattle.
Not only do I think the Vikings are going to get their asses handed to them, I'm so confident in it. I'm starting Seattle's defense in my fantasy league.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I'm counting on sacks, turnovers, fumbles.
The thing that the Vikings
interceptions, fumbles.
The thing the Vikings got going for them is Seattle can't play defense right now. A huge problem right now. They're giving up 31, 35 points a game. But more importantly,
they'll look like all-stars tomorrow.
But I'll tell you what, though, if the Vikings can, get the ball to their two receivers to really, force these guys to not go 8 in the box, or I think the Vikings can win the game. Seattle. The thing about it is, can we stop Russell Wilson? Right? Can we? He's in talks for MVP right now. So I think if the Vikings, it'll be a shootout. If anything, it'll be a shootout, or Seahawks will win a close game. I don't like saying that. It'll be a shootout if the Vikings. I'm going to predict 2 ways. If we get the Vikings offense involved early on, I think the Vikings can sustain because they can't be behind. If the threat to run is how the Vikings dominate on offense, if Seattle does what they've been doing, we won't be able to stop them.
And that's exactly what I think.
So you got a young wide receiver who's saying, okay, you guys said I can't run left or right. You know what I'm doing? I'm catching touchdowns and doing it great. And what's his name?
DK Metcalf.
DK Metcalf.
Yeah, right? And that's what exactly Russell Wilson, I think, is the best quarterback in football. I did draft Mahomes in my league over Russell Wilson because I believe that I didn't believe in Seattle's weapons until it's like, okay, this guy's he's that good. It doesn't matter.
They built a team around Russell Wilson,
right? Exactly. Right? And it's brilliant. And I'm not hating. I'm very happy with my Mahomes pick. He's a boss.
Nobody can stop Mahomes with Mahomes.
Yeah, and nobody can stop Wilson right now, and I do believe
the Vikings do, though. Oddly enough, when you look at the statistics, we really had some horrible games against us, right?
Yep, up until this season is what I'm saying. Yeah. I think tomorrow he's going to have another 5 touchdowns, and is what I'm thinking is that defense is just like Gostkowski at a career day. I'm thinking that defense is going to suddenly look great tomorrow, and we're going to spawn the next Seahawks run, and they're going to have a great defense, and everyone's going to go, it all really started on that Minnesota game.
We talked about beginning of the year.
That's how it always goes with us.
It is, but guess what? One of the key points we talked about when we anticipated this season, the COVID season, is what is home field advantage? Well, it doesn't really mean anything in basketball. In all honesty, it doesn't mean anything in football at this point, right? You got more teams, defenses drawing the offense off, false starts than the other way around, right? And when you have home field advantage, you have crowd noise, right? And they don't have that 6 man. So I think a lot of teams have gone into Seattle and put up some points, and they don't have the same personnel. But granted, you know what? What they do have, like you said, is Russell Wilson, right? But can the Vikings do so? My theory on the Vikings is they're a great organization, and you have to be patient because they find a way to develop their talent. Their coaches, if you want to see a team succeed, then root for success every week. Don't root for tanking. Losers do that, right? Look at all the teams who continuously have the 1st and 2nd and 3rd overall pick, right? There's a reason why it's the same teams. You don't bet on losing. It's player development. The draft is overrated.
Yeah, you just keep plugging. Yeah, and that's where I want to wrap this up. So I predict the Vikings will do exactly that. They won't even take the season properly and go get Trevor Lawrence or any crazy dream scenarios. Get that out of your head. It's not going to happen. The Vikings are somehow magically going to fucking fix the season, and then they'll make a big run, and we'll finish.
Let's talk about their D-line real quick. So who do you think I'm a huge fan of the Lynch guy we got out of Baylor, right? Because what we've been proving, the game has gotten smaller. And because of that, you can have a defensive tackle under 300 pounds create problems for the opposite team.
Yep.
Whereas in the old NFL, you had these big lugging guys who carried around and walking away to 340. You don't see that as much now. You see the game is faster. So, I think that the Vikings might shock us and allow some of the rookies now to play, right? And that's what we're looking for. They did the same with Stephon Diggs. So the question is, are we going to see some of our young rookies? And the theory is the Vikings always tend to develop their young rookies. So it's a change of pace. So if the Vikings start Lynch and he goes out there and does what I think we got, I think Lynch can be a sack machine. What I saw from his highlights is he has that motor, that it factor. And I think if we finally get a chance to see him.
I'm hoping so, man,
right?
Because, I do like, what's his name? Doesn't make it sound
South
good.
Carolina guy?
Doesn't make it sound good that I'm forgetting his name right now. No, not him. DJ Wonnum. No, I'm not talking about him. I don't like
Jaguars
that
guy.
I don't like that guy. No, I'm not talking about the D end. I'm talking about the other DT that stepped up like a man when Marcus Spears dropped out. Not Jaleel Johnson. Maybe it is Jaleel Johnson.
I think it is, right? I think it is who had a pretty good game.
And he consistently keeps getting in the backfield.
Yeah.
Consistently, to disrupt running plays.
Yeah, and that's something to look at.
You put that guy, because the way the Vikings rotate linemen out, okay, you bring a Blake Lynch in, or not Blake Lynch, James Lynch.
Yep.
The Vikings did draft a guy named Blake Lynch. He's a linebacker out of Baylor as well. He's on the practice squad now.
Okay, yeah.
You get him, Johnson. I think it is Jaleel Johnson. That just doesn't sound
right.
He
was the guy who came in and looked pretty, because it's not Shamar Stevens or whatever his name is. It was Jaleel Johnson. He was the other D tackle that I felt was making plays against the run. Not Shamir Stephen or whatever, Steven or whatever. He's
Shamar Stephen.
Shamar, whatever his name. Okay,
I can't remember.
But regardless of
that could turn into a pretty decent old line. You get Hunter back. It's like that
we'll see. But he's been
line could be all right.
But that's what I'm saying. The Vikes are a great organization because they find ways to develop the talent they have. And this is just a situation where it just will allow the Vikings to take all these players they drafted to see if we can develop them like I think we can.
Well, especially if you're going to not only turn around and draft guys like Jefferson, but if you can leverage these late round picks, and get, what did we trade, a third and a fifth to go get Yannick Ngakoue?
Something right, yeah.
That's a brilliant move, a great pass rusher in the prime of his career.
So you got to find a way to sign him.
If you can start doing that, and that's how you leverage those draft picks, then you're really, now we're cooking with gas.
And we got Cleveland too, right? Like, think about it. With second round pick, why hasn't he started? Because we don't just throw rookies in and just say, here, it's your position. You got to earn it.
See, and what I think is interesting is, like, we don't need to do the Philly route, and like they mortgaged their future to win that Super Bowl that year. I think most Philly fans would still say it's worth it. However,
I'd say it's worth it as Vikings.
However, if you have as many picks as the Vikings do every year, and you discover you're about to make that run, and you trade that same amount of draft picks, and you go get guys like Ngakoue and things like that, hypothetically speaking, you wouldn't be mortgaging your entire future because you still have a plethora of picks, because that's what he's been able to do.
But even so, like,
it's a brilliant move.
If you can develop,
if you do it right,
if you can strike hard, if you're not one of the top teams, if you're bottom of, middle of the pack, right in the 15th, 16th pick, the Vikings have shown that, like, you give them a pick like that, they'll make a good decision, right? And they'll develop talent. But I think what we need to look at is the talent we have. Even Holton Hill, has gotten better, right? Compared to what he looked like against the
Hughes
Packers.
looks a lot better too.
Hughes looks better, but more importantly, you got a bunch of young talent out there, and what happens with talent? It just needs time.
Troy Dye looks good.
Yeah, Troy Dye is a middle linebacker they got who's looking to fly around the field. So, the Vikings, they just hit the perfect storm of an unfortunate series of events that have kind of put us at a deficit, but they're a good team. They'll develop their talent, and I think just Vikes fans stay optimistic and focus on what positives come out, because you can always account that a great team will have something developing. And you know what happens when you have a great team? A new identity forms.
Okay, let's wrap it up there.
All right.
You never made your prediction. Vikings win, lose tomorrow?
You know what? I'm sorry. All right, this is an emotional pick, and I shouldn't, but I think the Vikings are going to game plan. You're going to see some different talent step up. I think that.
You think the Vikings are going to win tomorrow?
If is Ezra Cleveland going to play finally? I mean,
Okay, cool.
We'll
Here's the thing. I hope you're right. I made that mistake and said that before the Packers game, so I'm not gonna bet money on it. But goddamn, man, this was fun. Let's do it again.
Right on.
All right, love you, buddy.
Let's do it.
Thanks, guys. See you later.